Hey guys, welcome to a new video. Like, comment and subscribe if you enjoy. Without any further interruptions, enjoy the What If. Chapter 19. The Promise of a Wish. Yuzu, Silburn, ex-Yuzu awoke from a loud knock on her door. Her eyes shot open as she immediately jumped out of bed. The instant surge of adrenaline upon waking was an all too common thing now. The longer she had spent in the Silburn, the more reflexive she had become. Even the slightest things sent her into a hyper-aware state of mind. The teen cautiously made her way over towards the door and opened it. She was confused upon seeing the arrival. Standing outside her room was none other than Bambietta. Yuzu kept her resolve as she slowly examined the Sternritter. Bambietta was alone and she seemed to be relatively calm from what Yuzu could tell. Although she had difficulty telling time in the Silburn, Yuzu knew it was well past her normal waking hours, which surprised her. Wasn't today Candace's turn to train me? Why didn't she wake me up? She thought to herself. She was drawn from her distracting thoughts as her attention focused fully on Bambietta. The dark-haired woman had a nonchalant look on her face as if she wasn't really in a hurry to be anywhere. Yuzu tilted her head uncertainly as she finally spoke. Bambietta-san. Hey Yuzu-chan, can I come in? Bambietta asked casually. Yuzu wasn't entirely thrilled with the idea, but she reluctantly nodded in acceptance. Bambietta appeared to be in a decent mood, and Yuzu couldn't help but wonder what she wanted. The girl slowly stepped aside and held her arm up, gesturing for Bambietta to come inside. Afterward, the woman looked at Yuzu. You mind closing the door? Why? Is there something you wanted from me? Yuzu asked, not entirely on board with the suggestion. Bambietta rolled her eyes. Whatever, keep it open then. Anyways, I came here because I wanted to talk to you about some things. About Ichigo? Yuzu guessed immediately. The Quincy woman shrugged. Well, not exactly. It's more about you. You want to know about my shrift then? Yuzu assumed. HMPH, you're more blunt than I remember. That training must be paying off. Bazz-B and Candace toughening you up? Bambietta asked with a grin. Yuzu decided not to respond as she simply stared at Bambietta, awaiting the woman's true motive. After a brief silence, Bambietta chuckled. So you're L for light. Have you tried using your powers at all yet? No, I was trying to get better at the basics first, Yuzu answered honestly. Well, I'm sure you're probably wondering where Candace is right now. She wanted you to sleep in today since you've been working hard at your training. Candace decided to give you the day off, but she probably needed the break herself if you ask me, Bambietta explained. Yuzu seemed doubtful. Why wouldn't she come and tell me herself then? Candace is asleep right now, but she'll be awake later. So I came by because I wanted to level with you and maybe alleviate some of the misunderstandings that arose between us. We didn't exactly give you the best first impression. I was still a bit riled up over the whole battle with your brother. I wasn't entirely sure what Yuwatch had in store for you, but if you're actually a Sternritter, then there's no reason for us to be on bad terms, Bambietta explained. What are you saying? Yuzu asked. Bambietta sighed. I'm sorry for being a bitch to you. You've probably realized this by now, but I am not really a nice person. That being said, I'm an honest person. I won't lie to you about anything, Yuzu-chan. I don't like innocence, and you reek of it. It makes me sick to look at you when you stare at me so helplessly. I'm sorry, I can't help it, Yuzu replied timidly. The dark-haired woman shook her head and growled. Don't get all submissive on me just because I said something you don't want to hear. I am not here to try and scare you or tell you what to do, but hear me out for a minute. Bambietta paused for a moment, awaiting Yuzu's acknowledgement. After a brief silence, the teen reluctantly nodded. Bambietta closed the door with a swift push a moment later before looking at Yuzu again. I'm a killer, a dangerous one too. I have done some pretty terrible things to good and bad people alike. I don't discriminate between victims. I'd kill another Sternritter just as easily as I'd kill a Shinigami or a Hollow. You know all this stuff about me, and I'm sure Bazz-B has embellished his fair share of details too. Yes, he said you and Giselle were dangerous, was all Yuzu said in response. Part of her was getting nervous being in a room alone with Bambietta. She tried her best to appear calm nonetheless as she stared at Bambietta curiously. The most dangerous person in this place is His Majesty, Yuwatch. Him, Hashwolf, the elite Sternritters, and especially that little gremmy prick. Stay away from all of them whenever possible. Yuwatch may have made you a Sternritter, but don't think for a minute that it means anything. We're all expendable if we don't assert our power and prove ourselves to Yuwatch, Bambietta stated. What do you mean? Why would Yuwatch Sama's elite knights be expendable? Yuzu wondered. Since you're still clueless, I'll explain it to you. For a normal Sternritter, Yuwatch can easily take away any of our greater powers with Oswalin. I doubt he explained how Sternritter powers work, so I'll tell you now. When he gives out a shrift, he chooses a word from whatever letter it is, and the Quincy gifted it manifests the power on their own. He almost always assigns words that coincide with their owners. You create your own power off the word he gives you. Bazz-B's shrift was H for heat. He turned it into fire-based attacks. My shrift is E for explode. Needless to say I'm a Reishi bomber. Yours will be based around whatever you choose to manifest it as. When you have a shrift, you are able to achieve a greater spiritual state called a Vollständig. It's our most powerful form. Unfortunately, should Yuwatch ever use Oswalin against one of us, it'll rob most of our power, and possibly our lives depending on whether or not we're powerful already. Though we may keep our shrift's power, we would be unable to use Vollständig or any greater Quincy abilities anymore, Bambietta explained in detail. Why would Yuwatch Sama use that power though? Yuzu asked shocked. Don't you get it? He becomes more powerful when he divides his soul out and invests it into other beings. Then he'll take out what we've done with it and make himself stronger. He also uses this power to keep all of the Sternritters in line. Some of the elite Sternritters are ridiculously powerful, how else would he control them? Bambietta explained thoroughly. Didn't Yuwatch Sama say that Ryu-san and I were immune to Oswalin? Why would he give us shrifts then? Yuzu asked. Bambietta shrugged. I don't know, but it brings up a troubling fact. It means I'm probably more expendable than you, Bambietta replied. That's horrible, but then why do you all stay? How did you end up here? Yuzu asked shocked. Bambietta sighed. Well, that's a long story. Needless to say, Sternritter recruits are usually people that can't say no when asked to join. Mostly all of us were tempted by the dream of a greater future. Whether or not we'll get our wishes remains to be seen. What do you mean, your wishes? How did you end up here, Bambietta-san? Yuzu asked interested. Bambietta looked away as she crossed her arms. Well, that's personal. I'm not the kind of girl who goes spreading her past around for people's pity. Not to mention, it's not something I like to talk about with those I barely know. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to offend. Would it be too invasive to ask you what your wish was? What made you believe in this place? Yuzu asked uncertainly, because I don't understand any of it. Why do the Quincies hate the Hollows and the Shinigami? The Shinigami believe in exterminating Quincies because we're a threat to their balance of the worlds. They regulate the amount of souls that exist in the world of the living, the Soul Society, and Hueco Mundo. If any get out of balance, then it endangers the fabric of reality, at least that's the belief they stick by. Under the Soul King, this system of balance and rebirth is endless, but Quincies aren't a part of it. That is why we're enemies with Shinigami. They want to make us extinct because we're not a part of this system. Yuwatch wants to kill the Soul King and take his place so that we can fix the current system. As for Hollows, well, they're the most lethal foe a Quincy can fight. They're poisonous to us, which makes them a major threat if allowed to prosper without restraint. We hate these enemies because they are the biggest threats our survival, Bambietta explained in detail. Yuzu looked away, not fully understanding. Was it always like this? How do Quincies even exist if they're not part of this system? We exist because of our Lord, Yuwatch. He created the Quincies. Every Quincy alive carries a piece of his soul and blood. You'd have to ask one of the older members if you're really interested in all the history behind it. I haven't been here half as long as a lot of them, so I couldn't tell you anything for certain, Bambietta replied. Yuzu shook her head. But I'm human though, how could I have had any relation to this race? Quincies are humans, they're just descendants who are spiritually attuned to Yuwatch and his powers. You ever heard of Nephilim? The angel-blooded humans. Quincies are kind of like that, the dark-haired woman clarified. Yuzu didn't seem to fully believe it as she stared blankly. So Quincy's are angels then? Yuzu asked disbelievingly. Essentially, yes. Considering that you watch as God, that's the closest comparison I can make, Bambietta nodded. Then who is the Soul King? Yuzu wondered. Bambietta sighed, well I don't really know. But our Lord, you watch, wants him dead. So you used to be human too? Yuzu asked. Bambietta took a moment to pause before answering, it feels like a lifetime ago, but I used to be human, yes. Well, I was still pure-blooded Quincy, but I didn't know it at the time. I suppose it wouldn't hurt to tell you, if only to put things in better perspective. Tell me what? Yuzu asked anxiously. I'll tell you about my past. Bambietta took a few seconds to take in Yuzu's reaction as if wondering whether or not to go through with it. The teen seemed to have a genuine look of empathy and curiosity which ultimately led Bambietta to give in. When I was younger, I used to be pretty religious. I'd pray at a dom every day. I always had a fascination with spiritual things, even more so because of the war, Bambietta began. What's a dom, and what war are you talking about? Yuzu asked curiously. A dom, you know, a cathedral. It's a type of fancy church that has Gothic architecture. I guess you don't see many of those where you live. But anyways, the war I'm referring to was the Zweiter Weltkrieg, the biggest war in the world of the living's history, Bambietta specified. Her laid-back tone seemed to be shifting into a darker one much to Yuzu's surprise. Yuzu didn't recognize the foreign words that Bambietta spoke, but assumed they were German. It was then that Yuzu realized that Bambietta was referring to the Second World War. She wasn't the biggest expert on history, but Yuzu was quick to realize something obvious. Were you a Nazi? Yuzu asked surprised. The immediate conclusion seemed to click well in her head as it explained why Bambietta was the way she was. Maybe that's why she's so violent. All of these strange words they use around here must be German. The Sternritter looked at Yuzu and shook her head. No, I wasn't part of any political stuff or the military. I was a teenager barely older than you were when it all started. None of it really made sense to me when I was younger. My father and brother both fought in the war, though they didn't really have a choice. You don't look much older than a teenager, Yuzu muttered louder than she meant to. Bambietta gave Yuzu a quizzical glare. Well, people age differently in the spirit world. How did it happen though? I mean, well please continue, Yuzu stammered through her own sentence. My father and brother were the only family I actually had, and since they were both conscripted, I had to live and work at the local dom for a few years. It was okay, but I was afraid I'd be stuck there forever. It feels like a lifetime ago, Bambietta sighed. So you were Christian? Yuzu asked. Catholic, but it doesn't really matter either way. Neither one really turned out to be quite what I was expecting. It's funny how your people's religion ended up being closer to the truth than mine, Bambietta sighed. You mean Eastern religion? Yuzu asked for clarification. Bambietta nodded. Yeah, the one with the whole rebirth cycle thing. I forget what it's called. But I digress. Eventually the idea of being stuck at the dom became irrelevant because one day the war came to us. I remember the bombs, the mortars, the tanks. All of the planes being shot down, a lot of people died. Even the dom wasn't safe for very long. I can't really remember how long we waited through the bombings, but ground forces eventually moved through our town as well. So what happened? You were hiding in a church while fighting was going on outside. Yuzu said surprised. Yes, normally soldiers had enough respect to avoid religious buildings, but we weren't so lucky. I should have fled the dom when the bombing stopped, because all that place did was make us targets. Weak people love to gather together, like lambs. Those soldiers knew innocent people were hiding in the dom, and they didn't care, Bambietta grimaced between her teeth. The church made you targets? The Kurosaki teen asked uncertainly. Yeah, it's an obvious sanctuary where most civilians would feel safer and hide. As fate would have it, we were later discovered. I'll spare you the details, but things didn't go so well. We were captured and, Bambietta stopped mid-sentence. She seemed like she was having a hard time finishing her train of thought. It was obvious to Yuzu that this was a very unpleasant memory for Bambietta. Are you all right? You don't have to tell me if you don't want to. Yuzu interjected as she stared at Bambietta's unusual expression. The dark-haired Quincy took a deep breath before continuing. They treated us terribly. Between watching the mortars and bombs destroy my home, and suffering the indignities of captivity, it all just made me numb after a while. I couldn't even cry anymore after that, nothing fazed me at all. I felt dead inside. How did you get out of there? Yuzu asked softly. One day during our captivity, I woke up and I felt something. It was like an echo. It got louder and louder over time. I felt something again, rage. That last day of captivity, I awakened my Quincy powers. Heavy trauma and stress is almost always a trigger for drawing them out of a person. I used my powers to get free, and to punish those soldiers. I always thought murder was such a terrible sin, but it's strange describing the feeling I got killing those people. Releasing all of my anger in an explosive rampage, and the calmness I felt afterward was just indescribable. Yuzu was beginning to get nervous the longer she listened to Bambietta's story. She's starting to scare me again. Yuzu gulped. Don't look at me like I'm a psychopath, Yuzu-chan. I didn't enjoy killing them, but I was happy that they were dead. Being powerless is a terrible feeling, and it's something I never want to experience again. I don't expect you to understand. It's like I told you earlier, I'm a killer and I don't pretend like I'm not, Bambietta concluded. That's horrible. What did the other captives say when you killed those men? Yuzu asked curiously. Bambietta shook her head. They thought I was possessed and ran away from me. Some died in the streets to gunfire just to escape. I terrified them. After it was all over, I ran away from the dome too. I ran through the streets, and tried to find somewhere to go. Eventually I encountered Hashwolf after living on the run for a while. He introduced himself as a messenger of God and offered me a place here. That's how I ended up coming to the Wandenreich. So there's my story. That's a very sad story. Nobody deserves to go through something like that, Yuzu said sadly. Spare your pity, it's making me ill. I told you so that you would understand that I'm strong because I have to be. If you intend on surviving here or anywhere, then you will need to be strong too. It makes no difference now what happened anyways. Whatever life you and I left behind is irrelevant because here, we all exist to serve our God, you watch, whether we want or not. And one day he'll grant our wishes, Bambietta said strongly. Yuzu could tell by the way Bambietta ended her sentence that she wasn't entirely thrilled with being part of the Wandenreich either. How many of them came here under similar circumstances? I wonder what Bambietta's wish is. Yuzu thought to herself for a moment. Why did you watch Sama make your shrifty for explode? Yuzu couldn't help but ask. Bambietta looked at her as if it was a stupid question, because he's got this wondrous sense of humor. How the hell should I know? Why would he make you L for light? Because you're some precious little angel. PFF'd. I don't pretend to understand these things. Oh, well thank you for telling me about your past, Bambietta-san. It really makes me wonder about all of the other Sternritters though. Did any of your friends come from the same time period? The Kurosaki teen wondered. We're all from different times and places. I didn't meet any of them until I came here. Though I believe a lot of the newer members were more recently recruited in the last century, Bambietta explained. What's Giselle's story then? She's very strange, and I wouldn't mind knowing why. Yuzu questioned. Bambietta gave Yuzu a serious look. Don't ever ask that question to me or anyone again. Gigi is literally crazy. She's got some kind of multiple personality disorder. Sometimes she acts friendly, and other times, well even I'm concerned. Her past is something you have no business knowing about. It makes mine look mild by comparison. Out of respect for her, I won't tell you. If she wants to tell you herself, then that's her decision. Though you're better off not knowing, trust me. Is it really that bad? I thought she was your friend, Yuzu asked somewhat frightened. It's a bit darker than you could probably handle. Gigi is my friend, but her real personality is something you actually should be afraid of. If she's acting energetic, happy and peppy, then you have nothing to worry about. It's when she starts getting paranoid and acts different than usual, that's when you should be careful around her. Though luckily she only really gets that way when she's alone. Just be nice to her, and Giselle won't do anything to you. Her biggest issue is people rejecting her, Bambietta explained. The Kurosaki teen thought back to the time where Giselle entered her room. Something about the shifting dark voice the zombie Quincy used was pretty haunting. Bambietta's perspective on Giselle was strange to say the least. Yuzu feared the zombie Quincy even more now. Giselle did say she hated to be alone, and she was acting pretty paranoid. That must have been her real personality. I still don't understand what she was trying to tell me though, Yuzu thought to herself. Having heard about Giselle from Bambietta, she was even more curious to know about Candace now. According to Bazz-B, Candace was almost as bad if not worse. Candace is so nice to me though. I have a hard time believing she's worse than Giselle. I wonder why Bazz-B doesn't like her. Yuzu's mind was now racing. What about Candace? Do you know anything about her past? Yuzu asked after a short, awkward silence. She wasn't expecting Bambietta to tell her, but was more interested in seeing her reaction to the mention of it. She had to know if there was even a shred of truth to it. Candace's past is something you're better off asking her yourself, Bambietta replied. I wonder why she doesn't want to tell me. Yuzu thought to herself. The mystery behind Candace was only growing larger and larger. So you were from Europe then? You speak my language pretty well for a foreigner. Yuzu changed the subject. Bambietta gave Yuzu a weird look. You think we're speaking your language right now? Yuzu seemed confused. Yeah, are you saying we're not? I don't understand. Language doesn't really work that way here, Yuzu-chan. All spiritual beings can understand each other to some extent. Dominant language phrases and words come through sometimes, however. I don't really feel like going into detail on it, but you're not speaking your language right now, Bambietta stated with a disinterested face. Really? That's unbelievable. How does that work? Yuzu responded somewhat disbelievingly. Bambietta sighed. All right, think of it like this. You ever heard the story of the Tower of Babel? It speaks of a time where all people spoke the same language. That's the spiritual language. To you it sounds like we're speaking your language, but to me it sounds like we're speaking mine. That's the best way I can describe it. We're speaking the spiritual language. It transcends the world of the living and normal humans. Thanks for explaining that to me, and well, all the other stuff too. Sorry for asking so many questions. I just want to understand this place better, Yuzu apologized. It's whatever, Yuzu-chan. I was the same way when I first came here. Robert told me about a lot of this stuff, and I told us not. We all used to debate it quite often. But yeah, enough of that for now, Bambietta trailed off. So was there anything else you needed? Yuzu asked awkwardly. It just now came to mind that she still didn't know why Bambietta was really talking to her. Well, I just wanted to clear things up with you first. The main reason I came here is because me and some of the other girls wanted to know if you'd be interested in hanging out with us today. It wasn't my idea, just so we're clear, but I figured it would be a good way to break the ice. Maybe you could get to know them and some of the others around here better, Bambietta suggested. You want me to hang out with you? Yuzu asked somewhat nervously. She still had a bit of paranoia when it came to being around the Femriders, but given Bambietta's apology and the long talk they had, Yuzu thought it wasn't too bad of an idea. Bambietta seemed much more human to her now. I suppose I wouldn't mind that, Yuzu replied after a brief silence. Bambietta chuckled. Good, I'm sure the others will be glad to hear it. Come on, they're all lounging around in my room at the moment. As they made their way for the door, Bambietta stopped before opening it. She turned around slowly and looked at Yuzu with dangerous eyes. Don't go telling people about my past, I only tell certain people. And for your own good, don't ask Gigi personal questions. I won't, I promise. Yuzu gulped. Part of her was tempted to ask why Bambietta told her. I wonder why she trusted me enough to tell me her past. Her story was heart-wrenching. She might not look it on the outside, but she has to be emotionally hurt. I feel so sorry for her. Before we go, I just wanted to ask you one thing. If you had a wish, what would it be? Bambietta asked more calmly. Yuzu tilted her head curiously. She found it strange that Bambietta would ask a question like that, but answered anyways. I'd wish for my family to be together and happy again. And for a peaceful, better life for everyone. Huh, so I know we teased you about it, but were you actually close to your brother at all? You took the news of him being a hollow better than most would have, Bambietta asked. Ichigo was a wonderful person. He helped people and looked out for those who couldn't protect themselves. I felt safe whenever he was around. He had a great heart. Even though he was kind of a delinquent, Ichigo would always be there for me when I needed him, Yuzu answered. Bambietta thought about how Ichigo protected Nell back during her skirmish with him and frowned. Yeah, that must be nice. I could never trust somebody like that. I don't even trust my own friends half as much. You told me about your past. Do you trust me? Yuzu asked. As a Quincy, hell no I don't. I know you would desert the Wandenreich the first chance you got. Although you're probably too afraid to leave yourself, and you're hoping your brother will come and save you, Bambietta replied. Yuzu's eyes widened in shock. She couldn't really find the words to denounce Bambietta's claim and simply stared awkwardly. Relax, Yuzu-chan. I'm not going to judge you for it. If I had a brother like that, I'd probably want the same thing. Unfortunately, that reality isn't going to happen. As powerful as your brother may be, he's no match for you. Watch. I think you should shift your priorities to the present. You're a Quincy and a Sternritter. The survival of our people depends on all of us, and now you as well. Serve faithfully, and maybe your wish can be granted. His Majesty does want Arrancars in our army, so who knows, Bambietta said after a long silence. Yuzu didn't really know how to respond and simply nodded quietly. Bambietta turned again and finally opened the door waving for Yuzu to follow. As they made their way down the hallway, Yuzu could hear Candace's voice calling out, "Hey, what's going on?" "Candace, you are finally awake. Good timing," Bambietta greeted as the lime-haired Sternritter caught up to them. She looked between Bambietta and Yuzu curiously. "I told you I was going to get her, Bambietta. Yuzu's not comfortable being alone around you or Giselle yet. Well, maybe you should have woken up sooner." Yuzu's agreed to come spend the day getting to know everyone better, Bambietta explained. "You got her to agree to it? That's surprising," Candace said somewhat disbelievingly. She looked at Yuzu curiously for any signs of fear or torture. The teen appeared relatively untouched, much to her confusion. "Hey Candace, can I ask you something?" Yuzu said as the Sternritter was staring at her. "Sure, what is it?" she replied curiously. "How did you end up here?" Yuzu asked. Candace immediately shot a look towards Bambietta. Did she tell Yuzu about her past? That's weird. Why would Bambietta tell her of all people? "Well, the same as most others I guess. I got recruited by Hashwolf a while back," Candace said casually. "I think she's more interested in why you decided to come here," Bambietta clarified. Candace cocked her head curiously. "Oh really? I take it you told her about why you're here." "No, I just told her about my life as a human in the world of the living," Bambietta said dismissively. "Ah okay. You were Austrian, right?" Candace asked. Bambietta nodded. "MMHMM. So where were you from, Candace?" Yuzu asked anxiously. "England," Candace replied as she gave Bambietta a funny look. Bambietta rolled her eyes at the way Candace said it. Yuzu didn't really understand it, but assumed it was some kind of inside joke based on Bambietta's reaction. "You're from England. That's neat," Yuzu said with an interested expression. "Yeah, but it's not like that means anything around here. I think most of the Sternritters are from somewhere in Europe or Asia," Candace shrugged. "Where is Bazz-B from?" Yuzu asked curiously. "He's from the Lichtreich, I believe. Most of the older members were from that time period. I'm pretty sure Bazz-B has been here almost 1,000 years, Bambietta answered. Candace shrugged. "Who could say? All we know is Hashwolf and Bazz-B are from the same place. They've been here way longer than most of the current Sternritters." "Lichtreich, where was that?" Yuzu asked. "It was in ancient Europe." Not really sure where, to be honest," Bambietta answered. "What about the others? Liltato, Meninas, Giselle?" Yuzu continued. "Ask them yourself. I forget where everyone's from. I'd rather not dwell on all that past nonsense though personally," Candace replied with an uninterested tone. "She doesn't seem like she wants to talk about her past at all." Single quote. Yuzu couldn't help but notice. "What are you three talking about?" A masculine voice sounded as they turned the corner. The three females looked up surprised to see none other than Gerard Valkyrie standing there. "Gerard, what are you doing over here?" Candace asked attentively. Her shift in demeanor led Yuzu to believe that she was somewhat afraid of this Sternritter. Bambietta's posture stiffened as well as she eyed the man seriously. Nothing important. Yuzu-chan was just asking about where we all came from. Ah ha ha, I see. Quite a curious little girl, isn't she? Gerard noted as he looked down at the teenager. Yuzu gulped fearfully as the towering warrior stared at her for a moment. Where is she from anyways? An island country in East Asia called Japan. I found her in a city called Karakura Town, Candace answered. The Nordic warrior nodded. Ah, interesting. I wonder how Quincy blood got all the way over there. What was your name again, girl? Yuzu Kurosaki, the teen answered timidly. Something about this Norse-looking Sternritter was extremely intimidating to her. Yuzu Kurosaki. Interesting name. Does it mean anything in particular? A person's name usually says a lot about them, he said. Nothing specifically, but the kanji for it has separate meanings, Yuzu replied. Quite a shame. I might have to give you a worthy nickname then. Congratulations on earning your place amongst the Sternritters. I hear your shrift was L for light. Am I right? He asked. Yuzu nodded. Yes sir. Ha. Good to hear. That sounds like a useful shrift. You probably don't know who I am, so I'll introduce myself. My name is Gerard Valkyrie. I'm M for the miracle. I'm also one of the elite Sternritters, he said enthusiastically. Elite Sternritter. Yuzu thought worriedly. She remembered Bambietta's warning about them, which only seemed to make her more nervous around this man. Did you need something, Gerard? Candace asked somewhat skittishly. Yuzu was not used to seeing Candace lacking in confidence, which only furthered her belief that this elite Sternritter was terrifyingly powerful. He shook his head. No, I just heard you three talking, and thought I'd say hi. Since when has he been friendly? Bambietta thought shocked. She looked over at Yuzu for a moment. He must be interested in Yuzu's powers, maybe he's sizing her up for himself. Gerard never acknowledges new recruits. It's nice to meet you Valkyrie-sama. Yuzu bowed respectfully. Sama, you don't have to call me by any titles. I may be an elite Sternritter, but I don't go around acting condescending to you newbies. So long as you're strong and you prove your worth around here, then I won't have any issues with you, he said gesturing for Yuzu to stop bowing. What should I call you then? Yuzu asked. Most people call me Gerard, but I don't care if you want to call me that or something else, he replied with a hearty chuckle. What kind of name is last name is Valkyrie anyways? Candace shook her head. Since we're on the topic of names, I've never heard of that surname before. It sounds German or possibly Scandinavian to me, Bambietta cut in. It's a title that I adopted when I was still alive. My shield brothers would call me Valkyrie born due to my skill in battle. Many believed that my mother was a fallen Valkyrie herself, Gerard answered. She was probably just a Quincy, Bambietta stated the obvious. One who lost her powers through Oswalin. She thought immediately afterward. Shield brothers. That sounds like ancient Norse to me, Candace added. Gerard nodded. Well, I was a raider on the North Sea a long time ago. You mean you were a Viking? Candace clarified. Yes, we would go Viking. I sailed west and fought in many battles. I sought to prove myself and earn my place amongst the gods, and so I did. The Norse Quincy replied with a chuckle. You actually believed in all that pagan nonsense. I'll bet coming here changed your perspectives on a lot of things, Bambietta replied. He gave her a hard glare. Not as much as you would think. I have earned my place amongst the gods. I don't quite follow. How do you see you watch then? He is God after all. We're his angels. Bambietta crossed her arms. Gerard shrugged. We have different interpretations of the same thing. An angel, a god, a Quincy, there isn't much of a difference in the grand scheme here. When I was first brought to this place, Yuwatch explained to me how the Shinigami killed Quincies. I believe that the gods themselves were simply greater Quincies that were slain by the Shinigami. Does it not make sense to you, little girl? Who are you calling little girl? Bambietta shot back, but was silenced as Candace elbowed her. The lime-haired Sternritter shot Bambietta a look telling her to shut up. Candace nodded at Gerard's explanation understandingly. You're right, Gerard, that does make sense. What are they talking about? Yuzu thought completely lost. She wasn't sure what Gerard was talking about, but found herself increasingly curious about him the more he spoke. How long have you been here, Gerard-san? Yuzu asked. Well over 1,000 years. I was here during the last invasion of the Soul Society. It was quite interesting seeing the Shinigami captains for myself. They are strong gods who wield great power. They waged a great war against us and many died on both sides, he replied. You fought Shinigami captains before? Bambietta asked curiously. Gerard nodded. Yes, I even killed some of them. How else do you think I became an elite Sternritter? Though the Shinigami leader, the old man, he wielded the fires of hell itself. He was a powerful, demonic warrior that managed to drive back Yuwatch during our last war. We could not defeat him. Don't you have somewhere more important to be right now, Gerard? We're kind of in the middle of something, Bambietta sighed in annoyance. Gerard crossed his arms which flexed by impulse. Don't let me keep you then. Make sure you're ready for the invasion, whenever it's time. I'll be on my way. Yuzu stared at his muscular posture nervously. He must be incredibly powerful, he was a Viking too. How scary. He looked down at Yuzu for a moment before walking away. Farewell, Yuzu Kurosaki. You seem like a promising recruit. I look forward to seeing your shrift in action. Perhaps you can demonstrate it for me once you get better accustomed to your powers. It was nice meeting you, sir, Yuzu said as respectfully as possible. After he was gone, Candace and Yuzu followed behind Bambietta back on the way towards her room. Yuzu felt relieved that the intimidating warrior was finally gone. Candace shook her head. It's not like Gerard to talk to us, he's never said more than 2 words to me at a time before. What the hell were thinking trying to talk back to him like that, Bambietta? Exclamation mark. Gerard isn't Bazz-B or Askin, he'll kill you if you pick a fight. He was one of the elite Sternritters. Yuzu asked for confirmation. Bambietta nodded. Yeah, he's one of the current 3, Lil Baro and Pernita are the other 2. They're all a bunch of weirdos. Like I told you earlier, stay away from them when you can. Figures that Whackjob was a former pagan, somehow I'm not surprised. He was scary, but he seemed friendly enough to me, Yuzu said doubtfully. Candace sighed. Gerard is not to be messed with. He could kill most of the regular Sternritters by himself. I saw him kill a deserter once. He hates traitors. He's probably just curious about you since you're the Hollow King's sister. So he would kill me if I ever tried to escape, Yuzu thought worriedly. The idea of the massive, Norse Quincy chasing her down was frightening. Cower all you want, Candace, but I am not afraid of him, I just think he's trouble. Besides, I know he's powerful, but I was not about to back down to him just because of that. You'll get no respect by acting all submissive to men, Candace, Bambietta hissed. I was not submissive, but I know where to draw the line. You need to keep your issues in check before they get you killed, Candace shot back. Whatever, Bambietta rolled her eyes. As they continued walking down the hallway, Bambietta looked at Candace seriously. Who do you think is going to fill the 4th spot for Elite Sternritter? Who knows, probably Grimmy, Askin, or maybe Bazz-B. I highly doubt any of us would get selected. We're too new, Candace replied. Yuzu perked up curiously. Why are there only 4 Elite Sternritters? They're Yuwatch's personal guard, minus Hashwolf. They're on a different level than the rest of us. I think Yuwatch picks 4 because it symbolizes Seraphim guarding God, Bambietta explained. I see, Yuzu trailed off as her mind began to wander on the topic. I can't believe how connected all of this supernatural, spiritual stuff actually is. I wonder what the Soul Society is like. I still don't even know where this place even is. It definitely isn't heaven, she thought. Before she knew it, they were finally at Bambietta's room. Upon stepping inside, Bambietta announced their arrival. What's up, we're here. Oh wow, you got her to come. Menina's perked up surprised. The pinkish red-haired Quincy smiled at Yuzu. How's your training been going, Yuzu-chan? Pretty well, I've learned a lot, Yuzu replied. Candace looked around the room curiously. I'm surprised Giselle isn't in here. You girls seen her at all? Lil Tato was leaning against Bambietta's bed snacking on some sweets. She looked up and shook her head. I think she said something about talking to Hashwolf. She said she would be back later. Well, regardless, we're going to treat you to a special girls' day today, Yuzu-chan, Menina said cheerily. Really? A girls' day? Yuzu said uncertainly. It was my idea. It sounded like you were being overworked, and I wanted to get to know you better, Menina said with a friendly smile. As Menina waved Yuzu to come over, Bambietta looked at Candace seriously. What's your problem right now? Nothing. I'm fine, Candace said as she stretched. Giselle is up to something lately, I'm positive of it. I should keep a closer eye on her, Candace thought. Bazz-B's room. Silburn, Bazz-B tossed and turned in his bed deep in sleep. He was dreaming of his childhood with Hashwolf and was starting to sleep talk. No Jugo, go away. A few seconds passed as he shuffled in his sleep. Bazz-B reached up and tried to push whatever was on top of him away. Get off me, Jugo, I can't sleep with you there. Just let me rest a little longer. You're so cute when you sleep, Bazzy-kun, a feminine voice whispered in his ear. Giselle was currently on top of the sleeping Bazz-B and was poking him in different areas. She giggled quietly to herself at his various reactions. Wakey wakey, Bazzy-kun, I want to talk to you, Giselle whispered in his ear. Bazz-B groggily opened his eyes, still half asleep. When did your voice get so girly, Jugo, and why's your hair dark? I didn't realize you had that kind of bond with Hashwolf, Giselle giggled quietly. The Mohawk Quincy blinked hard several times as if he couldn't believe his own eyes. He stared in complete disbelief for a moment. Am I dreaming? No, this must be a nightmare. You would dream about me, wouldn't you? Giselle winked. It was at that moment, the reality of the situation dawned on him. Giselle was actually in his room and on top of him. Bazz-B immediately jerked upright and tried to get out of his bed, but was immediately pushed back down by Giselle. She covered his mouth with one of her hands and pinned him down. He could barely believe that she was strong enough to hold him steady. Bazz-B jerked violently around trying to break free, but stopped the moment Giselle squeezed a pressure point. Shish, nobody knows I'm in here. We're having a secret meeting, Giselle whispered. Bazz-B's eyes were widened with genuine shock. He stared at Giselle wondering why she was in his room. I'm going to move my hand off your mouth. Don't yell, Giselle said quietly as her hand slowly moved away. What the hell are you doing in my room? Were you watching me sleep? Quote. Bazz-B whispered. Giselle shifted into her real personality as she leaned closer towards his face. I figured it out, Bazzy-kun, why you're training the girl. You're such an idiot. If Lil Chan noticed, then what makes you think you watch or Hashwolf won't? What makes you think I wouldn't notice? I don't know what you're talking about. What's gotten into you? What do you want? He asked. Giselle gave him a dangerous look. You're going to get yourself killed and ruin a good opportunity. I wouldn't want my precious Bazzy-kun to die because he lacked subtlety. You're acting even crazier than usual. Get the hell out of my room, he said quietly. Bazz-B tried to push her off with his free arm, but stopped again when Giselle squeezed another pressure point. He grimaced in pain. If you don't get off me right now, I'm going to set you on fire, you crazy bitch. The zombie Quincy looked around for a moment as if making sure they were alone. After a brief glance, she whispered in his ear again, calm down, hothead, I need you to think for a minute. If I disapproved, I would have called you out on it in front of everyone. So you finally dropped your little act, huh? I didn't expect it to be like this. You're crazy, like literally crazy, he shook his head. You think you can see everything so clearly, don't you, Bazzy-kun? You might see through me, but I can through you too, traitor. Giselle countered darkly. Bazz-B gawked at her disbelievingly. What makes you think that? Giselle punched Bazz-B in the face way harder than he was expecting. Her hand moved towards his throat as she leaned in closer. Admit it, the girl is your ticket to the Hollow King. How did you? Bazz-B tried to ask but was silenced immediately as Giselle covered his mouth again. Shish, I think it's a good idea, but you need to be careful. Don't make any stupid decisions until we know for sure the plan will work. I'll help you, but we need to do things my way. Giselle let go of Bazz-B's throat and moved her hand off his mouth. There was some noticeable blood in his mouth trickling out. The zombie Quincy scooped a finger down over his mouth and licked the fresh blood on her finger. Bazz-B gave her a bewildered, somewhat horrified look. So you want to help me? You, of all people. It's brilliant, isn't it? Nobody would suspect that I was in league with you. That girl is our ticket to freedom, Bazzy-kun. We can get out of this place and get free of Yuwatch, Giselle whispered. We? Since when has there been a we? What about your little gang? Aren't you and Bambietta attached at the hip? Bazz-B said, shaking his head. Giselle shrugged. They don't need to know. I love Bambi-chan, but she's a blind zealot. She's so hopelessly dependent on the Wandenreich that she would die to defend it. She and the others are all too loyal to betray the Wandenreich. Bambi-chan didn't realize how powerful Ichigo-sama was. The others, they don't know what you and I know. And what would that be? Bazz-B didn't quite understand. We're nothing but pawns, sacrifices. Yuwatch isn't going to give any of us our wishes. You know that as well as I do. Not to mention, the Hollows are way more powerful than everyone believes. Hollows are his only weakness, and a Quincy Arankar would be immune to so many of his powers. Ichigo-sama is the only person besides the Shinigami leader who Yuwatch is afraid of. Surely there's something to be said for that, Giselle replied. Alright, so hypothetically if I agreed to work with you, then what would you suggest I do instead? Bazz-B asked. Giselle grinned. To start, let Yuzu-chan spend more time around the others. We want her to blend in better with the other Sternritters. If she starts acting like a normal Quincy, then her special status will go ignored by most of the others. Hashwolf and Yuwatch will be less suspicious as well. That would also alleviate Candy-chan's hyper-awareness. Once that's done, you and I can sabotage different people. Maybe thin the ranks out. How would we go about doing that? Bazz-B asked. Instigate someone into trying to kill you, and murder them. I can resurrect them as a zombie, and add to our numbers. And since we hate each other, nobody would suspect foul play. As for the other types of sabotage, you let me worry about that. I'm way stealthier than you, Bazzy-kun, Giselle whispered. I don't doubt that, Bazz-B noted. It was obvious how sneaky Giselle was considering the fact that she was able to sneak into his room undetected. It wasn't like him to be caught off guard. The only major obstacle that we have to deal with is Candace. She doesn't trust either one of us, but she's especially wary around me. Try to avoid her as much as you can. And let her train Yuzu full time. She'll be more preoccupied doing that and won't notice us as much while we're setting things up. But remember what I said. Don't fully commit unless we're sure it'll work. On the off chance that things don't work as planned, then we can just wait for another opportunity down the line. You need to learn how to play both sides, Bazzy-kun, Giselle explained. How do I know you won't betray me? He asked. Giselle finally got off of Bazz-B and allowed him to stand up. She looked at the door cautiously. Yuwatch doesn't have his full almighty powers back yet, so we still have time to make this work. We don't want anyone to suspect you of ulterior motives. When you train Yuzu-chan tomorrow, scare her away. Push her closer to Candy-chan and the other girls. We want an obvious rift between you two so that nobody wonders why you stopped training her. That didn't really answer my question. How do I know I can trust you? Bazz-B repeated as he wiped the remaining blood from his mouth. Giselle turned around and held a hand up to his mouth. Her hand lit up with blood as she healed his minor injury. You don't, but what other choice do you have? You need my help and I need yours. Bazz-B pushed her hand away, staring intently. Who should I kill then? Does it matter? Ideally someone hot-headed or stupid like you, but also someone Yuwatch wouldn't care about if they died. Try to avoid Bambi-chan's gang, Gremmy, the elite Sternritters, as not, and especially Berenice. Any of them can ruin this whole plan. Kill somebody who doesn't fall under that category. Your best options are Kangdu and Nianzol. Both of them would make useful zombies, Giselle said quietly. I'd have better luck killing Mask or somebody else. Those two have heavy defensive powers. It would make them super hard to kill before somebody broke up our fight. Bazz-B thought aloud. Their powers would be extremely useful, which is why I suggested them. I'll leave you to it, Bazzy-kun. Good luck, Giselle said darkly before turning to leave. Hey Giselle, one more thing, Bazz-B spoke up. Giselle turned around with a curious expression, but was immediately punched in the face. The zombie Quincy went flying onto the ground a second later. Don't ever punch me in the face again, he said with an annoyed glare. The Sternritter stood up and gave him a dangerous look. Bazz-B was beginning to immediately regret his decision as Giselle walked closer. She licked her lips as she grinned wickedly. The fact that she wasn't saying anything only made the situation even more creepy. Bazz-B stood there defensively stiff as he wondered what Giselle was going to do. The room got eerily quiet as Giselle stared at him without moving. Finally, he couldn't take the silence any longer and spoke, "Stop staring at me. You can go now. This is getting weird." A moment later, her aura seemed to lighten up considerably as she rubbed her face comically. "OWW, that hurt, Bazzy-kun. You're such a meanie sometimes. But friends trade punches so it's okay. I'm glad we're friends. Why do I get the feeling I'm going to regret this?" Bazz-B thought concerned. Giselle gave him a cheerful look. "We are friends, aren't we?" "Why yeah, friends," he replied somewhat slowly. "Ah, I'm glad to hear you say that. I knew you liked me all along. Have a good day, Bazzy-kun, and good luck with your tasks. Remember to be as discreet as you can." Giselle grinned widely. His eyes widened as Giselle left his room. Well, that was freaking weird. Las noches, Hueco Mundo. Ichigo was fast on his way back to Zale's lab following behind Yilfort. The blonde man tried his best to explain the situation as they rushed down the hallway. "As I said, Zale, Zamari, and I managed to crack the Quincy, Your Highness. The memory download should be complete soon, and we are completely inside its head now." Moments later, the two dashed into Zale's lab to see what was going on. The pink-haired scientist had an overly excited face as he turned to Ichigo. "Your Excellence, we've done it. Thanks to Zamari, we were able to completely hack this creature's mind. I downloaded its memory banks and a lot of relevant information regarding this Wandenreich. Come see for yourself. I waited for you to get here before I really dug into anything." "Greetings, White," Zamari acknowledged Ichigo as he stepped aside for Ichigo to examine BG9. "What's up, Zamari? Glad you could help with this," Ichigo waved as he looked over BG9. The cybernetic Quincy had even more tools and machinery probed into him now. Behind his head, Zale had a display screen. The pink-haired Arankar grinned evilly. "I'll start the memory playback as far as it'll go. Maybe we can discover how this thing was created." As he pushed a series of buttons, a strange electrical surge came from the Quincy's head as the screen lit up. Ichigo and the others watched with fascination. The first memory they saw was of a series of scientists leaning over BG9 on an operating table. BG9's first-person view shifted to one of its mechanical arms. BG9's first memory, he's responding. "Look, the android is moving," one of the scientists announced excitedly. BG9 looked up at its arms confused. "Operating systems are online. The dynamo generator is synced to his cardiovascular and nervous systems," another scientist said amazed as he looked over a screen. "Endocrine system, green, perfect fusion. The biological parts are accepting the synthetics." "You were right, Doctor, it worked," another scientist announced. The main scientist leaned over BG9 with eager eyes. "My son, do you recognize me at all?" BG9 looked at the lead scientist blankly. It spoke for the first time. "Target identified, human. It's me, your father." His cognitive recognition is being overridden by the positronic brain. "Cancel the restraining program. We need his positronic brain to copy the organic one's synapses. The window is closing, hurry," the doctor commanded. "Sir, that's not allowed. We haven't run enough tests yet. If this fails, then he'll end up like BG7, another scientist protested. "Do as I said. We have to do it now, or his consciousness will be permanently lost." "I'm not losing my son twice," the main scientist ordered. Before any of the other scientists could make a move, somebody came barging into the room. "What have you done, Doctor? What is this? What have you done to the BG9 unit?" "It's not BG9 anymore, it's my son," the main scientist answered. "Your son? What have you done? How could you do this to your own comatose son?" The intruder demanded. The head scientist pulled out a pistol and glared at him. "Stand back, administrator. Nothing is going to stop me now, not when we're this close. Undo the restraints now. Put the gun down, Doctor. And somebody please explain to me what the hell is going on," the administrator demanded. A moment later, gunshots unloaded into the man. The doctor pointed the pistol at everyone in the room. Override the restraining program right now. Enter the sequence. The administrator, Yuzu, shot him. He's dead. One of the scientists gasped in horror. Would you care to join him? The doctor threatened. Sir, please don't do this. If you undo it, then we won't be able to control him. Need I remind you that BG7 went insane when we tried to give it sentience? Even if you do put your son's will into this machine, his soul will be trapped. Surely you wouldn't deprive him of the afterlife. I never agreed to this. We're going to be court-martialed. Another gunshot filled the room as the protester fell over dead. The doctor yelled furiously, anyone else object? No, sir. They all said in unison. They all immediately went to work undoing the program that kept BG9 from being fully sentient. After a few moments, one of the men let out a sigh of relief. 10%, 40%, 90%. It's almost done, sir. The synapses are syncing now. Android, identify yourself. One of the other scientists asked as he busily worked a panel with various coding. BG9 Hunter-Killer Unit. Scanning room for threats, BG9 said as it sat up looking around. It's me, son. You've been in a coma for a long time. I brought you back. You're not quite human anymore, but you are alive, the doctor said between breaths. Sync 95%, 97%. No, something's wrong. A nearby scientist shouted. Program error, override failure. ... Restraining program locked. BG9 Hunter-Killer Protocol activated. Assassination Protocol activated. Canceling synchronization, BG9 said mechanically. A nearby screen began to flash red as a siren went off. The scientist working near it gasped, oh no. His defense protocols are blocking the system. He's going to kill us. We have to shut him down. No. This is the only window we've got. If you shut him down, his brain will die. The doctor shouted. What the hell is happening right now? I'm getting strange energy readings in this room. Electromagnetic interference or something. Another man gasped. Every computer console overloaded simultaneously as BG9 stood up. The lights all exploded shortly afterward. They all watched with horror as a strange glow began to outline the android's body. Targets acquired. Threat level. Lethal, BG9 stated in a robotic voice. His arms are glowing. What the hell is that? One of the men said frightened. That's a minigun on his arm, the doctor gasped. I don't see a minigun, doctor. Another scientist shook his head. BG9 activate assassination protocol override. Voice input. BG972HK termination, the doctor shouted. Override accepted. Assassination protocol deactivated. Continuing synchronization, 99%. 100%. Restraining program shutting down, the android said robotically. All of the men let out huge sighs of relief as BG9 lowered its arm. BG9, run self-awareness diagnostic on your positronic brain, one of the men ordered as he pulled out a spare laptop. BG9 simply stared at him silently without even acknowledging the command. Sir, I think it's completely aware now. The sync must have worked. We need to finish the tests, but it looks like the positronic brain and the organic brain successfully synchronized. Why am I here? Where is this place? BG9 asked. It looked around the room. The emergency lights kicked on as it did so. My son, your name is, the doctor was about to tell him before armed soldiers ran into the room and immediately opened fire. Every scientist in the room was shot to death by the armed intruders. They all fanned out and pointed their weapons at BG9. Freeze. One of them demanded. BG9's mechanical eye scanned the room, targets identified. Self-defense protocol activated. What the hell is that thing? Exclamation mark quote. One of the soldiers asked. It's some kind of robot. We're under orders to destroy everything in here. Blast it. The commanding soldier ordered. BG9's pointed its minigun at the entrance to the room and immediately opened fire. The soldiers didn't seem to be able to see the weapon as they unloaded their assault rifles on the cybernetic Quincy. The soldiers all gawked in terror upon seeing their ranks decimated by some invisible force. What the hell is it doing? Its arm is glowing, half the squad's dead. A man shouted before his head exploded. BG9 made quick work out of the rest of them before looking at its arm curiously. Unknown energy signature, scanning. Reishi spirit particles identified. What is this? Zale's lab, Hueco Mundo, X. Wow, it's an actual android then. This is incredibly advanced technology. So based on this creature's memory, it looks as if it was created to be a robot assassin, but was then later repurposed into an android for this doctor's son. It has a positronic and an organic brain. Quite incredible. That would also explain the perfect biomechanical organs, Zale exclaimed. How could a machine like this have Quincy powers? Ulquiorra shook his head. Zale shook his head. Dear brother, did you not see how the scientists and the human soldiers reacted? They couldn't see the minigun. This android's human half was that of a comatose Quincy. How incredible that this team of scientists were able to rebuild him in such a way. Fast forward through some of this stuff. I need to know where and how it joined the Wandenreich. We need to study that part of its memory specifically, Ichigo stated. Alright, let's skip ahead here and see what we can find. Oh, this looks interesting, Zale said excitedly. XBG9's later memory, the android walked around on what appeared to be some kind of battlefield. Dead bodies littered the horizon. BG9 pointed its minigun at a vast horde of nearby hollows and opened fire. The weapon did wonders and effortlessly obliterated the creatures. Quite impressive. Machine, or are you a machine? I wasn't aware a machine could see hollows, the voice of none other than Hashwolf sounded. The android turned around and spotted the blonde man. His eye lit up in a HUD display trying to identify the man. Target acquired. Human male, who are you? My name is Jugram Hashwolf, I'm a Quincy like you, the blonde man answered. Searching for all accounts of the word Quincy, scanning, Quincy, a mythological human with holy powers primarily based in Eurasia. Cross-reference target, Jugram Hashwolf, no results found. Explain yourself. What are you? BG9 said. The second part of his speech was more human-sounding. Hashwolf looked at him curiously. I am the Grand Master of the Sternritters and acting leader of the Wandenreich. I come representing the God Emperor Yuwatch. He detected Quincy powers here and sent me to find you. Searching the name, Yuwatch, name identified as a variation of the monotheistic God in human religion. I don't understand, BG9 replied. You may be more machine than man, but you're a Quincy. How else would you possess spiritual powers? You've been killing hollows out here, I see, Hashwolf noted. What are hollows? BG9 asked. You have many questions, Yuwatch has all the answers you seek. Come with me, the Wandenreich could use someone like you. What is your name? Jugram asked. This one doesn't know its name, but is designated BG9 by creators, the android responded. BG9. Come with me, the blonde man waved. Sale's lab, Hueco Mundo, that blonde guy is the Grandmaster Sternritter. Ichigo asked surprised. He seems like he was quite used to this kind of dealing. He must have recruited many Quincies in the world of the living to join him, Zamari noted. What are they stepping through? Is that some kind of shadowy doorway? It's not a Garganta, but it seems more like a dark Senkaimon, Zale said as the memory played out. They watched it for a while and noticed a grand icy palace with very European-themed buildings. That's odd looking, Ichigo noted. The blonde guy says it's called the Silbern. Ulquiorra cut in as they watched Hashwolf explain the situation to BG9. They watched silently as Hashwolf led BG9 up into the heart of the palace, passing many unusual-looking Quincies along the way. BG9's memory continued. Yuwatch-sama is inside. Be very respectful, BG9. He can kill with a word. Hashwolf held his hand up, gesturing for the android to head into Yuwatch's personal chambers. Upon stepping inside, the biomechanical Quincy scanned Yuwatch, who was sitting at his throne, half awake. Come to me and tell me your name. BG9, was all the android said in response as he approached Yuwatch at a brisk pace. His scans all brought up errors when he tried to identify Yuwatch's composition. You're one of my children, machine. No, you're not a machine. You're a man inside of a machine. A Quincy, Yuwatch started. Requesting information, BG9 has no knowledge of this place. This one wishes to know about its existence in relation to the Quincy race, BG9 spoke. Ah yes, knowledge. A noble pursuit for any being. You will find all the knowledge you seek here in the Wandenreich, BG9, Yuwatch explained. This one doesn't understand. Why did you bring me here? BG9 asked. I will give you knowledge, and in exchange, you will serve the Wandenreich faithfully. All Quincies are my children, and you are a Quincy. I offer you a place among my elite knights, Meisternritters. Serve faithfully, BG9, for your purpose will become clear with us, Yuwatch explained. This one accepts. I want knowledge, BG9 replied. Then knowledge you will have. I grant you the shrift of K for knowledge and a piece of my soul, Yuwatch said in a half-aware state of mind as he granted BG9 a portion of his power. The Quincy android glowed so bright that its vision was blinded temporarily. Zale's lab, Hueco Mundo, X, so that was Yuwatch. Something about him seems familiar to me, Ichigo said as the light flashed across the screen. What did he just do to him? Zamari wondered. He gave him some type of power and letter designation by the looks of it. K for knowledge. What do you think it means? Yilfort asked Zale. The pink-haired Arankar shook his head. It seems to be some kind of soul division. Think of it as giving someone a bucket of water from a well. This must be how the Wandenreich empowers its Sternritters. I would have to do more research to identify the exact effects though. Maybe that's how these Quincies achieve that Vollständig state. Ichigo theorized. The light's clearing up. What's happening now? Yilfort wondered as BG9's vision shifted back to normal. The group watched it for the better part of an hour, fast-forwarding through a long, monotonous memory bank full of very little significant action. It seems as if this Hashwolf gathers Quincies and brings them to Yuwatch to make them Sternritters. There's quite a few of them there, Zamari noted as they watched Zale fast-forward through irrelevant memories. I'll have to study this thing's memory in more detail, but it could take quite a while to dig up anything useful, Zale sighed. That would take way too long. There's years' worth of memories here. Fast forward it to the very end so we can see something more recent, Ichigo replied. Zale nodded as he entered in a sequence of buttons causing the memories to skip ahead considerably. This looks good, huh? I think they're having some kind of assembly. Oh, check that out. There's a video of you. Zale pointed. Ichigo's eyes widened with surprise when he saw the assembly of Quincies watching a video of his attack on the Soul Society. How did they get footage of that? Have they been watching the Shinigami? Ichigo wondered. There's some people on the stage with that Yuwatch guy. I wonder who they are. Yilfort said. Pause it. Ichigo roared. The other three Arankars flinched upon hearing Ichigo's outburst. Zale immediately did as commanded. Ichigo moved closer towards the screen and stared at it dumbfounded. Is that, Yuzu? Exclamation mark quote. Who is that, white? Zamari asked concerned. My human sister, Ichigo answered as he focused intently on the image. He could not believe his eyes. You're what now? I didn't know you had siblings, my king. Wait, she's with the Quincies though. How does that work? Zale asked completely lost. Rewind the memory and try to find out how she got there. Ichigo commanded. As you say, Zale replied as he moved the memories back. They did so until he found a previous large gathering where BG9's attention was zoomed into Yuzu's face. From the android's point of view, they could see BG9's scans reading her. The readings identified her as a Quincy. Yuzu is a Quincy, and she's there. Exclamation mark quote. Ichigo cracked a fist. You okay, Your Highness? Zale asked worriedly as he took a step back. The air began to get heavier as Ichigo's anger level rose. Wake this thing up right now, Ichigo yelled. Zale fearfully unplugged several tools from BG9 and unhooked an anesthetic tube. He proceeded to flip a few switches which sent an electrical surge pulsing into BG9. The android's mechanical eye turned on shortly afterward. The moment its eye came on, Ichigo ripped the android off the operating table and began to drag him away. You're going to tell me everything, BG9. Why do you people have my sister? Exclamation mark quote. Ichigo demanded in a terrifying voice. Zale traded a horrified look with Yilfort. This isn't good, we need to make sure he doesn't damage it too badly. Stay back, it would be unwise to get in White's way right now, Zamari commanded as he slowly followed behind Ichigo to see what was going to happen. Meanwhile, Ichigo dragged the Sternritter outside of Las Noches at remarkable speed. Upon exiting the palace, Ichigo held BG-9 by his throat, forcing the android to its knees. He charged a colossal Sero in his hand and growled furiously, "Start talking now." BG-9 didn't obey his command, much to Ichigo's annoyance. He proceeded to fire the Sero right next to BG-9's head. "The next one won't miss." "Talk, damn it." After his Sero finished, Ichigo stabbed his hand into the android's neck and twisted it around. BG-9 let out a scream of pain as Ichigo dug his hand into a nerve. Yuzu Kurosaki was apprehended by Sternritter T. Candace Catnip. She has been inducted into the ranks of the Wandenreich. His Majesty, Yuwatch, spoke of making her a Sternritter, BG-9 replied fearfully. Ichigo pulled his hand out the Quincy's neck and glared at him. "Oh, so you can feel fear and pain. Tell me then, Quincy, are you ready to die?" Exclamation mark quote. Ichigo growled as he squeezed BG-9's neck tighter. "I have already failed my mission. BG-9 will die either way," the android Quincy replied. "What mission was that, by the way?" Ichigo asked darkly. The biomechanical Quincy didn't respond, which only made Ichigo angrier. "I could kill you a million different ways, but I don't think that's what it would take to break you. No, I'm going to hollow fee you, Quincy, and watch you die, slowly." BG-9 felt genuine terror as Ichigo stabbed his finger with his masked horn. BG-9's blood on Ichigo's finger sizzled as it came in contact with his hollow blood. The Arrancar held the blood in front of BG-9's eye. "I know what happens to Quincy's when they get infected with hollow blood. I hear soul suicide is the most painful way to die for a Quincy. I hope you enjoy it. Zale amplified your pain receptors. I don't envy the hell you're about to go through. In fact, maybe we can hook a psychedelic drug into you and make it last even longer." "No, please," BG-9 pleaded. "No, you don't want to die. Then tell me what the Wandenreich is up to, and what they're doing with my sister." Ichigo roared. "His Majesty wants to destroy the Soul Society in order to get revenge against the Shinigami. They are responsible for bringing Quincy's to the brink of extinction. He also realizes that Hueco Mundo is a threat, and wants to deal with the Hollows first in order to avoid a two-sided war. He's right, we are a threat. But he thinks he can deal with us, huh? I remember the last pair of you bastards that came here. They tried to abduct Arrancars. Well, take a look behind me, Quincy. This is Las Noches and I have hundreds of Arrancars here. I am the High King of Hueco Mundo. The Cerro Espada. I rule this desert. If your little Wandenreich wants a piece of me and my friends, then I'll kill you all. I'll burn your damn Silbern to the ground." Ichigo ranted. "You know about the Silbern?" BG-9 asked with a scared tone. "I do, in fact. How's about you tell me how to get there? How do you open those little gateways to that icy little place?" Ichigo demanded. "To enter the Schattenbereich and reach the Silbern, one must pass through the Gate of the Sun. Only pure-blooded Quincy's can create the Shadow Gates," BG-9 answered. "Well, isn't that convenient that I happen to have one with me?" Ichigo said darkly. "What's going on, Ichigo?" The voice of Aizen sounded from behind. Ichigo glanced back and saw Aizen watching him from a short distance away. "Sosuke, what are you doing out here?" Ichigo asked. "I sensed your rising spiritual pressure and assumed something was happening. Based on the situation, I imagine you discovered something important from the Sternritter survivor." Aizen deduced. "They have my sister, Yuzu, and this bastard is going to take me right there." Ichigo said aggressively. "We can't face the Wandenreich yet, you know this, Ichigo. You must at least need achieve your segunda etapa first. Besides, everyone's scattered right now, and I don't want you going there alone." Aizen tried to calm him. He glared at the man angrily. "Damn it, I don't care. I'll fight their whole army by myself. Nobody is going to lay a hand on Yuzu. Think before you act, Ichigo. You can't blindly go rushing into the fray with our forces spread out right now. The situation is too fragile. You don't know anything about this enemy. Yuwatch is a real threat that even you and I can't match currently. We need preparation, and the Hogyoku needs more time as well. I doubt Yuwatch will kill her. It seems more likely that he knows she is your sister. She is definitely leverage or bait. You don't want to play into his hand," Aizen replied calmly. Ichigo grimaced angrily as he thought the situation over. He couldn't deny Aizen's logic and simply sighed in acceptance. You're right, they might try to use her to get to me. It just makes me so angry that they'd involve my innocent little sister in this. The time for action will come, Ichigo, just be patient. For now it's best for us to do nothing and come up with a strategy to deal with the Wandenreich. This makes achieving your second release all the more important, Aizen nodded. Yeah, Ichigo said as he let go of BG9. The Quincy felt a wave of relief hit him as Ichigo calmed down. The Hollow King looked down at the android. You get to live for now, BG9. I'm taking you back to the lab, and you're going to explain every little detail about the enemy. If you refuse, then I'll make sure to deliver on my promise of putting you through hell. Affirmative, the android replied fearfully. Chapter 20. The Pit Dwellers, Soi Fon, Outlands of Hueco Mundo. Soi Fon followed the three Arrancars for quite a while it seemed. The absence of any indication to time was really starting to wear heavily on her sanity. She had no way of knowing how long it had been since coming to Hueco Mundo. The desert seemed to go on forever, but something about these supposed outlands were unfamiliar to her. She knew they were not the same as the desert she had been trekking before. She wanted to know exactly how it was possible this place existed out of White's range of influence. The former captain shook her head deep in thought. It's just ridiculous to think that these hollows never even sensed White at any point. I mean, the guy's power is intoxicating when he's exerting any kind of energy. I know Hueco Mundo is pretty large, but I don't really understand the scale of this world. Like, where the hell are we? Something bothering you, Soi Fon? Athena was quick to notice the former captain's distress. The dark-haired woman looked over at the Arrancar and nodded. Actually, yes. I was wondering, exactly where is this area in relation to Las Noches? I don't really understand the surface of Hueco Mundo all that well. It seems strange that Las Noches is only a legend out here. What keeps hollows from finding it? You make it sound like a lost city. Athena shook her head. It's not that surprising, honestly. It's very atypical for anyone out here to know about it, let alone reach it. Las Noches is literally out of reach for most hollows in the Outlands. To actually even get there, you would have to get across the Abyssal Scar. Abyssal Scar? What's that? Soi Fon perked up curiously. Yin stared at Soi Fon intently. I'm surprised you've never heard of it. Almost anyone who's heard of Las Noches knows about the Abyssal Scar. It's a huge dark chasm that separates the landmasses in Hueco Mundo. Most hollows just call it the pit. Landmasses. Las Noches is on another landmass. I don't understand, Soi Fon said, confused. Allow me to explain, Soi Fon. Currently, we're on the smaller landmass called the Outlands. It's roughly 1/3 the size of the main landmass. That mainland is called the Manos Highlands. It's on the other side of the Abyssal Scar, Athena elaborated. Soi Fon shook her head. Then what the hell are the outskirts? Is that the same thing? The outskirts usually refer to the areas closest to the Abyssal Scar. It's commonly called outskirts on the other side of the pit. The hollows here know it better as the Maw, though it is technically the outskirts as well. We're actually close to the Maw outskirts, Athena elaborated. Soi Fon shook her head. This is all confusing as hell. Why do they call it the Maw? Because most hollows that cross into that territory are swallowed up by the Abyssal Scar. It's incredibly dangerous to venture near it and very dark in the Maw's outskirts. Not to mention, pit dwellers are known to drag victims down below, Yin cut in. So I'm on another landmass. That's preposterous. I wonder why the landmasses are split. It seems strange that some deep, dark trench would separate them. The name certainly seems unusual, Abyssal Scar. Scars normally imply it was cut or damaged somehow. It must be massive if it keeps the landmasses separated. Soi Fon couldn't help but wonder. How big is the Abyssal Scar anyways? Has it always existed? Soi Fon asked, interested. Let's put it this way, crossing it isn't advisable. It's incredibly vast and deep. You can't even get across the Abyssal Scar practically because it's difficult to find the other side unless you know about it. That place is also completely absent of any light. So unless you can fly fast and see in the dark, then I wouldn't even attempt going near it. That place is terrifying to most hollows, so very few ever venture over it. Most hollows don't even know that it separates Hueco Mundo. It's seen as the edge of the world, so to speak. Anyone stupid enough to attempt crossing it usually ends up dying to the pit dwellers. Only an incredibly powerful hollow could cross untouched. Yang explained. What are pit dwellers exactly? Are they hollows? Soi Fon was even more confused now. Yin rolled her eyes at Soi Fon's oblivious questions. As the name suggests, they're hollows that live in the abyssal scar. Most of them are wretched creatures that don't even go through typical Manos evolutions. It's pretty rare for a pit dweller to ever leave the immediate vicinity of the abyssal scar. Most of them hate light and very few ever achieve any kind of humanity. They're as primal as hollows come. What do they even look like? Soi Fon wondered. Yin thought for a moment. They're not like Manos hollows. I think the closest comparison I could make is shadow hollows. There's actually a variety of different kinds of pit dwellers, but the only noteworthy ones are the black bat colonies because they are the only ones who leave it. The bats are the ones that prey on anything in and around the abyssal scar. They all have huge green eyes from what I've seen. So these bat hollows sometimes leave the pit. Soi Fon thought somewhat curiously. She briefly recalled the memory of Ulquiorra. He had large, deep green eyes, and looked something like a bat in his release state. That added to the earlier records of him being a winged Vasto Lord made her wonder if there was any connection. They can, but most typically don't. They hate light. The only natural light you'll ever see in the pit is from their glowing eyes, Yin replied. Exactly how much do you really know about these creatures? The former captain asked carefully. I've been trying to study the bat pit dwellers for ages now. From what I've been able to learn, the stronger ones are all close to Vasto Lord level in power. Those ones are called alphas. There's actually 4 levels of power to them. Alphas are the most powerful and usually lead massive colonies. They're extremely rare and I imagine there's only a handful of them, Athena answered. What do alphas look like? Soi Fon asked. Alpha bats resemble winged demonic vampires. Well, at least that's the most accurate way I could describe them. They're very intelligent and are some of the few that don't act or look like beasts. That makes them far more dangerous however. They're more than a match for any hollow short of an experienced Vasto Lord or a mid to upper level Arankar, Athena explained. Soi Fon's eyes widened. I can imagine, they sound pretty terrifying. Winged vampire hollows are the last thing I ever want to see. Yin nodded in agreement. You can say that again. I wouldn't want to be bitten by one of those things. Upon hearing Yin's comment, Soi Fon's mind trailed back to Ulquiorra again. The first sighting of him was with white. From what she could remember from the recording, Ulquiorra didn't even have a mouth. That added to the fact that he was pure white instead of black led her to wonder if Ulquiorra was some kind of special pit dweller or even one at all. By themselves, you might stand a chance fighting one, but you'll never find an alpha by itself. They always fly in colonies. Below alphas are the betas. They're stronger than Ijukas, but weaker than Vasto Lords. Betas look like gargoyles and there's roughly a dozen or so in each colony. They act as enforcers for the alphas and are the most notorious for hunting Manos hollows above the scar. They have the ability to communicate, but typically don't, Athena continued. Below them are the gammas. Unlike alphas and betas, their wings are fused with their upper arms. They're more primitive looking and have a very similar likeness to harpies or bipedal bats. Gammas are about as strong as normal Ijukas, but they are very beastly and feral. They can speak, but have underdeveloped cognitive abilities. Beneath gammas are deltas. The deltas are the most common bat hollows I've seen. They're literally giant black bat hollows, Athena finally finished. Soi Fon just stared at her for a moment taking in all of the information. I never imagined that Hueco Mundo was this complex. Not only is there another landmass in this place, but an entirely different evolution of hollows. So then what would that make White's friend? He was a white bat with no mouth. Could he have been one of them? So these bats are all black and shadowy. Have you ever seen a white one before? Soi Fon asked doubtfully. Athena stared at Soi Fon seriously. A white one? Have you seen a white bat? No, I was just wondering if there were any like that, she responded cautiously. The former espada gave Soi Fon a somewhat suspicious look. Are you sure you haven't seen it? The white bat does actually exist. One of the betas I captured told me about it. It's as powerful as the alphas are supposedly. Though it's a one-of-a-kind hollow. I've been searching for it for a long time. So where would this white bat fall under in your classification if he's as strong as the alphas? Soi Fon wondered. The white bat is the Omega. The beta the first captured referred to it as such. They're all afraid of it from what I've been able to discern. I wanted to find it and discover why, Athena explained. Well, bad news for you, he's White's right-hand enforcer, Soi Fon thought to herself. So how did you cross this abyssal scar exactly? How did you even see where you were going? Without any kind of landmark or horizon, it's not uncommon to go in circles when attempting something like that, Soi Fon changed the subject. Considering my nature, I was able to cross it without much trouble. Athena replied. Yeah, Lady Athena was a phoenix owl hollow. She can see in the dark, fly, and glows pretty bright. It probably scared all of the pit dwellers away, Yang added. Huh, a phoenix owl, what the hell is that? Soi Fon deadpanned. Yin rolled her eyes, it's the type of hollow she used to be. Obviously she retained traits from it. Her mere presence radiates light and she can see in the dark. It's not that complicated. I swear you're more clueless than the Ajukas around here. Cut her some slack, Yin, Athena defended, there's nothing wrong with her asking questions. If I recall correctly, you asked just as many when I found you. Aye, but I wasn't completely clueless, Yin tried to protest. Yang sighed, it's whatever, Yin, no need to get all serious about it. Soi Fon's one of us now, so it's only right to help her out. Besides, it's not like we have anything else to do on this walk. Yeah, I hear you. It's just weird that she's so clueless considering the random bits of information she knows, the blue-haired Arenkar shrugged. Soi Fon took a closer look at Athena and much to her surprise, she did notice a subtle glow around the Arenkar. She stared for a brief moment, I guess that explains why she seems to glow. I thought I was just imagining it. I wonder what a phoenix owl looks like. Was that her hollow form? I wonder what White's was. So what about you two? Yin and Yang right. What kind of hollows were you? Soi Fon asked curiously. We were sky serpents as Ajukas. It's a pretty rare form for a hollow to take, Yin answered. Were you ever Vasto Lords? Soi Fon couldn't help but wonder. Yang nodded, briefly, though Lady Athena found us before long. We've been Arenkars for a while now. Sky serpents huh? Like dragons, Soi Fon said with a hint of interest. Not exactly. Wyverns and sky serpents are a lot like dragons, but they're not the same thing. A real dragon hollow would be a huge deal. Like, a ridiculously huge deal, Yin stated. How do you figure? Soi Fon asked. Zangetsu was a dragon during Hueco Mundo's ancient past. He was the only one of the Ajukas to ever take that form. It's quite symbolic really since he ended up becoming the king. Seeing another dragon would be the symbol of a new king. Dragons are powerful, and godly. A hollow in that form would be destined for greatness, Athena said distantly. So then what about a phoenix owl? Soi Fon asked as she directed a serious look towards Athena. The Arenkar chuckled at her question, are you asking me if I'm powerful? Something like that, you never really mentioned your place in the old days. Soi Fon said carefully, she already knew that Athena was an Espada, but was curious to see whether or not Athena would lie about it. There's no point in really avoiding the truth of the matter, I was an Espada. I prefer not to associate myself with the title anymore. I feel as if I have lost the right to call myself as such. It weighs upon my heart as a shadow of remorse. I regret living on while my fellow Espada died, I regret not avenging the death of my king. But, so much time has passed since then, and I have simply decided to move on. I'd rather not talk about it anymore to be honest, Athena sighed sadly. Yeah, I won't mention it again, Soi Fon said in acceptance. Inwardly she was already dissecting the information, so she admits she was an Espada, but feels ashamed of using the title. Arenkars are a lot different than normal hollows. Between these hollows and some of the ones I saw in Las Noches, they're not that far off from actually being human. Upon realizing that fact, Soi Fon's mind stopped racing and began to slow down. She could barely wrap her head around the concept since it completely contradicted everything she formerly believed. Hollows were human, at least some of them were. She was drawn from her thoughts by Athena's voice. I'm very curious about you, Soi Fon. I understand that you might not have all of your memories, but would you care to tell us about yourself? Yeah, what kind of hollow were you? Yin asked. If her mask was any indication, I'd say a bug of some kind. That mask fragment reminds me of antennae, Yang began to theorize. Soi Fon always had a comparable likeness to a hornet, and decided to simply go with that. I have to tell them something. A hornet would make sense, being my hollow form. I was a hornet, Soi Fon answered bluntly. Huh, interesting. Bug hollows are known to be extremely powerful if they reach Vasto Lord. I don't doubt that you're strong, Soi Fon. It will be interesting seeing what you can do in the days to come. We can help you master your Arrancar abilities, Athena replied enthusiastically. So where exactly is your little base anyways? Soi Fon changed the subject before they could investigate further. It's a considerable distance away, but nothing too crazy. You'll enjoy the tower, Athena said with a smile. Tower. Soi Fon's eyes widened. I thought you said it wasn't anything special. Well, compared to anything like the old days, I guess nothing is really all that impressive to me. You're free to make up your own mind about whether or not Torre del Sol is impressive or not, Athena stated. Ulquiorra. Outskirts of the Manos Highlands, Ulquiorra stepped over towards the exact location where he and Ichigo once stood as Vasto Lords. He stared into the darkness below with intensity. I swore I'd never return, but I must for the sake of understanding myself. Forgive me, Ichigo. The dark-haired Arrancar stood there for a moment taking in the full impact of his decision. He looked up at the moon one last time as if it were the last time he ever would. Without another moment to spare, he dove down into the pit below. He descended for what felt like hours, but could very well have just been moments. Returning to this abyssal, dark place brought a certain amount of uneasiness to him. Before meeting Ichigo, he was completely acceptant of the nihilistic reality of this place. A lot had changed since that time. He had seen the light, literally and figuratively. There was more to life than the dark, primal abyss. He had a purpose now. A reason to strive. He couldn't let the darkness swallow him whole. He had to master it, and himself. Upon finally reaching the bottom, Ulquiorra looked around. Though he had excellent vision in the dark, he still couldn't see anything except barren emptiness. Ulquiorra let out a calm sigh as he decided to sit down. He closed his eyes and fully immersed his senses in the darkness. A stillness came over his mind as he began to think about his past in this place. His thoughts grew more and more immersive, and before long, Ulquiorra found himself somewhere else entirely. He opened his eyes and found himself sitting atop a large mesa. The moon dimly lit the sky above, but it was just enough to illuminate his surroundings. In all directions, he could see an empty dune sea where sand aimlessly blew. Above him, a high perch extended skyward from the mesa. He looked at it curiously, and saw that it was a cave entrance of some kind. His eyes drifted skyward for a moment and examined a strange series of stars. They were shaped in constellations which seemed very familiar. A sound caught his attention from the cave entrance ahead of him. Ulquiorra snapped his attention back to it, and spotted a pair of eyes. They had golden irises, outlined within green sclera. Stepping from the shadows, the figure's dimly lit silhouette came into view. This creature was black and white, and had wings quite similar to what he had seen of the other hollows in the pit. Ulquiorra stoically examined the creature and said nothing as he awaited its next action. The creature stepped further out of the darkness of the cave and caught a streak of moonlight that revealed its form entirely. Upon seeing it, Ulquiorra felt a strange sense of déjà vu as if he knew what this being was. It stared at him for a long while before finally speaking. You haven't looked into your soul in quite some time, Ulquiorra. What brings you back to the shadows? Murcielago, is that you? Ulquiorra asked, but truthfully he was already convinced of the being's identity. You recognize your true self, but you do not understand it. You have changed much since leaving the darkness of the pit. Does this place look different to you? There is light in your soul now, the moon and stars shine within the darkness of your heart, Murcielago said calmly. I need to understand myself, I need more power. Tell me what I must do, Ulquiorra said seriously. You must embrace what you truly are, and embody the entirety of your soul. The darkness will always be a part of you. Your rejection of this truth is the only thing holding you back, Murcielago explained. What am I then? Ulquiorra asked. You're me, Murcielago answered cryptically. Ulquiorra stared at his inner self doubtfully. I don't quite follow what you mean by that. Conquer yourself, and accept what you are, Murcielago responded. A second later he appeared in front of Ulquiorra and threw him into the dark dune-covered horizon. Ulquiorra's eyes widened as he regained his bearings. Murcielago held his arm up and formed a massive green energy spear as he stared Ulquiorra down. Are you ready? Why are you attacking me? Ulquiorra asked seriously as he drew his zanpakuto. If you don't understand that, then you'll never reach Segunda Etapa, Murcielago replied. You will give me the answers I seek. I don't time for this, Ulquiorra responded disapprovingly. You don't have a choice, Murcielago replied before charging in with his lanza. The sheer power behind it was incredible as Ulquiorra parried. He slid back a considerable distance in the sand from the sheer recoil. He barely had time to react as Murcielago appeared behind him and wing slapped him to the ground. Ulquiorra swiftly jumped up and dodged the lanza as it speared into the ground. He began to take the battle more seriously now as he held his zanpakuto up, in close, Murcielago. A green light blinded the area as Ulquiorra transformed into his resurrección state. He barely had time to summon 2 Luz de la Luna spears as Murcielago swung his lanza against him. Ulquiorra struggled with all of his might against Murcielago's superior strength. Why is he this strong? The Bat Arankar thought urgently as he flaked off and distanced himself. He stared his inner self down with dead serious eyes. His mind was racing as he tried to rationalize the situation. Why are we fighting? It shouldn't be like this, Lanza del Relampago, Murcielago said calmly as he formed a second energy javelin. Ulquiorra's eyes widened concerned. That's not good. Without a moment of hesitation, Murcielago threw one of the weapons at Ulquiorra. The sheer power it seemed to radiate made Ulquiorra nervous. He didn't even attempt to counter it as he flew out of its trajectory as fast as possible. Despite getting a good distance away, he still felt a shockwave from a titanic explosion behind him. He briefly glanced back and saw a green mushroom cloud before the full force hit him. The force pushed him considerably skyward, but he managed to recover thanks to his wings. Ulquiorra looked around for Murcielago, but soon found himself flying towards the ground from a swift toss. As he descended, the bat appeared beneath him and uppercut him into the air again. Ulquiorra extended and flapped his wings rapidly as he tried to recover, but wasn't fast enough to stop Murcielago from grabbing his leg and swinging him into the distance. He spiraled sporadically before crashing into the massive mesa from earlier. As he tried to peel himself out of the rocky crater in the mesa wall, a black and green light illuminated the distance. Ulquiorra got off the rock wall and looked for a new direction to move. Cerro Escuras, Murcielago's voice sounded. Ulquiorra's eyes shot open as he turned around and spotted Murcielago right behind him. He looked seriously between the approaching light in the distance and Murcielago firing a cerro almost point blank at him. Did he fire a cerro and get here before it even reached me? Exclamation mark single quote. Ulquiorra thought shocked. Thinking fast, he tossed both Luz de Luna spears at the approaching cerro, before charging Murcielago. They seemed sufficient in stopping it, thankfully. Ulquiorra then grabbed Murcielago's arm and clutched tightly as he tried to point it away. Due to Ulquiorra's close range, the second Cerro Escuras wasn't able to hit him, and instead flew into the distance, igniting it in another colossal surge of power. Murcielago didn't seem fazed as he proceeded to peel Ulquiorra off of him. The black bat grabbed Ulquiorra by the throat and held him against the mesa wall. Ulquiorra reached up with one hand as he attempted to squeeze Murcielago's wrist. It proved futile, much to his shock. The green-eyed Arankar tried to form another spear with his other arm, but quickly found it held down by Murcielago's tail. Forming another lanza in his free hand, Murcielago pulled back his arm as he attempted to impale Ulquiorra. At the last possible second, Ulquiorra's legs flew up and kicked the bat in the face. He proceeded to wrap a leg around the bat's neck before grabbing onto him from behind. Ulquiorra squeezed tightly as he slipped down and put his arms in a sleeper hold around Murcielago's neck. He proceeded to lock his legs around Murcielago's waist as well and squeezed tightly. Unfortunately, this didn't last long as Murcielago's tail grabbed Ulquiorra by the neck, jerking him off. Ulquiorra tried to cut the tail as he formed a new spear, but quickly found himself airborne again as Murcielago threw him skyward. As he ascended, Ulquiorra shook his head dumbfounded. How can he be this powerful? Nothing I do is effective at all, he's on a completely different level than me. Ulquiorra soon found himself caught in midair by Murcielago's tail. It held him in front of the bat by his throat. He stared at Ulquiorra and shook his head. No matter what you do, you'll never be as strong as I am. This isn't over yet, I can't lose to you. Ichigo is depending on me, Ulquiorra said resoundingly. Murcielago threw Ulquiorra back towards the ground. He went crashing into the mesa top, leaving another crater. Ulquiorra struggled to his feet as he attempted to recover. I can't lose to him, I can't fail, Ulquiorra repeated to himself as he regained his will to fight. Murcielago appeared in front of him with his lanza and stared intently. Still fighting it, I see. Why, is this not what you wanted? I didn't want to fight you, Ulquiorra replied softly. Yet you resist with force. I don't think you're ready, Murcielago replied. You won't stop me, Ulquiorra said seriously. Murcielago shook his head. No, only you will. It was at that moment an epiphany struck Ulquiorra. Wait, he said, I'm him. That I had to accept the entirety of what I am. This is in my mind. Fighting him is like resisting what I am. I don't need to fight myself, I need to embrace it. During his revelation, Ulquiorra noticed Murcielago rearing back to stab him with his lanza. Much to Murcielago's surprise, Ulquiorra spread his arms and closed his eyes as it impaled him. You understand now, Murcielago said distantly. His voice seemed to carry a strange echo as Ulquiorra's inner world became blinded with green spiritual energy. His eyes shot open afterward, which brought him back to reality. Ulquiorra looked around seriously and saw that he was glowing like a black emerald star in the dark pit. He looked at his hands shocked. They were black and clawed, just like Murcielago's. The revelation of the situation finally hit him. I am Murcielago, the bat of the abyss. Is this my true form? My segunda etapa? Something strange caught his attention after recovering from his shock. Ulquiorra spotted a swarm of eyes in the shadows surrounding him. He could see them clearly in the darkness, his dark kin. The eyes of the pit dwellers grew closer and closer as he soon found himself completely surrounded. Ulquiorra looked around at them curiously. I wonder why they're here. Upon realizing that Ulquiorra was active again, the pit dwellers scattered in all directions as they fled from him. I should probably get out of here, the others need to know about how to achieve segunda etapa, Ulquiorra thought as he began to take off into the air. He flew fast and before long found himself upon the cliff edge once again. Briefly landing, he took one last look at the pit with an accepting stare. At least something good came out of returning to this place. A strange thought crossed his mind as he stared over the pit. I am a bat, so are they. I wonder if they'd react to my voice at all. I've never tried communicating with them since I didn't have a mouth before. Without giving it too much thought, he let out an unusual sounding screech. It was the first time he had ever attempted doing something like it, but for some reason the sound felt proper. He stared for a short time before turning his head around. Should have figured that was pointless to attempt. Not even seconds later, he sensed a strange vibration hit him. He could hear and feel it at the same time. It was quite like that of a bat's sonar. He cocked his head confused. That's odd, they responded to me. He thought about investigating the issue further, but ultimately just put the matter aside as he took his leave. I don't have time to test this out anyways. I need to get back to Las Noches. As he began to fly away, he heard another screech behind him. This time it sounded way more powerful. He immediately turned around mid-air and spotted a winged black hollow. It was approaching him at high speed. Upon getting in range, the creature landed in front of him and stared intently. This one looks different than the others, almost like a Vasto Lord, Ulquiorra thought. Though he didn't know it, this pit dweller was an alpha. The alpha faced the pit and let out a loud screech before turning back to Ulquiorra. Additional pit dwellers began to emerge from the shadows and quickly swarmed around them. Am I going to have to kill them? Ulquiorra wondered as he looked over the colony of bat hollows landing around him. I've never heard your call before. Who are you? What are you? Why did you call my colony? The Alpha asked Ulquiorra. Much to his shock, the Alpha was female. He stared at this vasto-lord-looking pit-dweller with curiosity. She was covered in black armor-like skin with some fur over the legs and arms. Her hands and feet resembled demonic claws and talons. Her mask was a lot like how his used to look, but it was black with green streaks. Fangs were highly pronounced on her hollow teeth as well, which gave her a vampire-like appearance. She also had wings exactly like his and a similar pair of large green eyes. Her hollow hole rested in the same place his did, and around it, he could see her exposed skin. It was a smoky gray, quite unlike his ghostly pale skin. My name is Ulquiorra, was all the man said as he continued to look around at the large swarm staring at him. The Alpha cocked her head as she took a step closer. My betas told me that a powerful hollow had entered the abyssal scar. I am surprised by the power you exerted in my territory. Tell me what you are, and why you called the colony. I am an Arrancar, Ulquiorra answered bluntly. Arrancar. The Alpha said, confused. What is that? Are you a Manos? No, I was born in this pit. You might not remember me from then, but I wasn't like the others, Ulquiorra responded as he receded his segunda etapa. Upon reverting back to his humanoid Arrancar form, the surrounding pit dwellers began to screech amongst each other. He wasn't quite sure why, but the widened eyes of the Alpha led him to believe that they were shocked. Your mask, it's broken. How are you so powerful then? The Alpha wondered as she examined Ulquiorra's normal form. That white horn, a nearby beta said disbelievingly. The Alpha immediately took a step back upon realizing who Ulquiorra was. You're the Omega. ? The colony of bats seemed highly agitated by the announcement and screeched back and forth in debate. Ulquiorra gave the Alpha an uncertain look. What? Omega? The white bat, you're the Omega. What happened to you? Do you live among the Manos now? The Alpha asked bewildered. I live in the moonlight of Hueco Mundo. It's a far better existence than living alone in the pit, Ulquiorra stated. You never answered my question, Omega, what is an Arrancar? The Alpha asked. They are hollows with Shinigami power. We're as close to humans as hollows can become. I am one of the Espada, the elite 10 Arrancars. We coexist in Hueco Mundo under the rule High King White, the Cerro Espada, Ulquiorra explained. His mask is broken like the other hollow we saw. She must be an Arrancar as well, one of the betas told the Alpha. The Alpha held her clawed hand up, silencing the gargoyle-looking creature. So you are aligned with the bright purple-haired hollow. I sent my betas to track her down when she flew over the abyssal scar. Are you allies with her? She was very powerful and we couldn't stop her from crossing, the Alpha said distantly. Stop her from crossing? Crossing the pit? To go where? Ulquiorra asked with a touch of anxiousness. To the Outlands. You don't know about that. The Alpha said slowly. Outlands? Ulquiorra said uncertainly. Yes, they're the landmass on the other side of our territory, the Alpha explained. Ulquiorra looked genuinely concerned. There's another side to the pit, and a purple-haired Arrancar crossed it, you say? How long ago was this? One of the betas stepped forward and answered immediately. It happened a considerable time back, but we still remember. She had a broken mask like you, Omega, and was very powerful. The Alpha nodded. She radiates light and flies over the pit from time to time. I didn't understand what she was until now. If what you say is true, then she is an Arrancar. I also saw a number on her shoulder as well. A number. Ulquiorra could barely describe the tension he felt as this newfound information was slowly unraveling. Yes, the number 1 was on her shoulder. Does that mean anything to you? The Alpha asked. Ulquiorra's face was truly full of disbelief. His mind began to race. A purple-haired Arrancar with the number 1 on her shoulder. Exclamation mark. Only an Espada would have a number that low, and what is this about her crossing the pit to go to another landmass? I need to investigate this, but it might be smarter if I informed Ichigo first. I imagine he would definitely want to look into the issue. You see this number on the back of my hands. It is the number 4. I am only the 5th strongest ranked Arrancar in Hueco Mundo. The number 1 would represent the Primera, the second most powerful hollow. And 0 is White's number, Ulquiorra finally spoke. The Alpha walked closer and looked at the numbers on Ulquiorra's hands. So then this purple-haired Arrancar was your Primera. No, she isn't. Our Primera was the former king of Las Noches, Barragan. That means there's a second Primera, Ulquiorra deduced for them. A brief silence passed as they all reflected on this revelation. During this time, it finally dawned on Ulquiorra that this situation was unusual. Why were these pit dwellers talking to him and not attacking? What did this Alpha and her colony intend to do about his release of power in their territory? How did you become an Arrancar, Omega? Are you our enemy? Or do you stand with your own kind? The Alpha asked after a long, gaping silence. I was never one of you to begin with, but no, I am not your enemy. I became an Arrancar by following High King White. I came here in order to achieve a greater level of power. My form you saw earlier was that achievement. We're training for a war. All hollows are building up power for the war with the Shinigami, the Arrancar responded. Many of the lesser pit dwellers were clueless about the information, but the betas and the Alpha seemed to understand some of what he was saying. A higher level of power. So you surpassed the Alphas after all. I guess you were born different for a reason, the Alpha said as if piecing everything together. How do so many Manos coexist under such leadership? Don't you have to feed? The Alpha asked. Ulquiorra shook his head. No, Arrancars do not have to feed on other hollows. Interesting. The other Alphas should definitely hear about this. They will be very interested in your transformation, the Alpha noted. I need to return to Las Noches and inform White about this second Primera Espada. We had no idea there was somewhere across the pit. He might want to explore it, Ulquiorra informed them. The Alpha gave him a curious look. Do you intend to cross the abyssal scar, Omega? What gives you the right to enter our territory? Right by power. None of you are a match for any of the Espada, let alone High King White. We have no intention to disturb you, however. We will simply cross, Ulquiorra replied calmly. By power you say. Interesting. Very interesting indeed. I'll tell you what, Omega. Return here with your king and I will gather the other Alphas to meet him. If he can prove his strength to us, then we will grant you passage across. Deal, the Alpha said slowly. You have my word. By the way, what is your name? Ulquiorra asked curiously. I am the Alpha of this colony. The other Alphas however refer to me as Dusk. You can call me that if you wish, Dusk replied. I will return as soon as possible, Ulquiorra stated as he began to walk through the swarm. Much to his fascination, they moved aside as he passed. As he continued onward, he heard Dusk's voice again. The other Alphas won't be as understanding as I am, Omega. If they don't agree to this, then I will side with them over you. Your king better be as strong as you say he is. My name is Ulquiorra, was all he said in response before flying away. Soi Fon, Torre del Sol, Hueco Mundo. After a considerable trek through the desert, Soi Fon noticed something bizarre about the outlands. The further they got from the pit, the brighter the sky seemed to become. In fact, it didn't even appear to be the permanent night that she was used to seeing now. Soi Fon looked around greatly confused by the change and noticed the moon was completely absent from the sky as well. After going over a massive cliff wall, she stood on the edge next to Athena, Yin, and Yang. All four of them were looking over the horizon where Soi Fon could see a massive tower sticking into the sky. Directly above it, she saw the sun. There was daylight in this part of Hueco Mundo. Soi Fon shook her head in disbelief as she tried to theorize reasons why that would be. She didn't really get much of a chance to think before Athena interrupted her thoughts. Here you have it, Soi Fon, Torre del Sol. This is my little base of operations, so to speak. The former Shinigami gawked at the building. She certainly didn't prepare me for this. She considers this a little base. That tower is enormous. You don't consider this impressive? Soi Fon asked Athena disbelievingly. The tower was far more incredible than Athena led her to believe. It must have been at least a kilometer high, and the tower was adorned in some type of white stone. It seemed to share a similar architecture to Las Noches, but under the sunlight it radiated like a pillar of supremacy compared to everything nearby. Soi Fon stared at it in wonder and couldn't help but think how strange it was that hollows managed to create something so incredibly beautiful in their drab, depressing world. It's not really impressive in comparison to Las Noches. The Night Palace was far more impressive, Athena restated. She considers that oversized dome with a bunch of flat top pillars more impressive than this tower. Exclamation mark. Is she crazy? Soi Fon thought. Las Noches was surrounded by 6 towers just like this. Its central citadel was twice as tall as all of them and decorated in the banners of the Espada. It was truly remarkable, Athena said distantly. Things started to make more sense to Soi Fon as she thought about Las Noches' current architecture. Its surrounding towers were only about half the size of this one, and Las Noches did not have a central citadel, at least not anymore. Those towers at Las Noches were all mostly flat at the tops. And the dome that made up the main part of the palace was well below the same plane of their tops. Maybe during the war they were cut in half. The citadel certainly isn't there anymore. I guess whatever hollow replaced Zangetsu turned it into a dome. Maybe that's why she keeps referring to Las Noches as a ruin. This is all too much for me to take in right now, Soi Fon noted mentally. Why is there daylight here but eternal night back there? Soi Fon asked confused. Good question, I'll tell you if you answer a question for me. Do you think I'm a fool? Athena asked bluntly. What? Soi Fon replied nervously. Yin and Yang traded confused looks with one another, not understanding Athena's question themselves. You were a Shinigami, weren't you? Athena asked. Yin and Yang both jaw-dropped, but before they had a chance to voice their anger, Athena held a hand up to silence them. What makes you think that? Soi Fon replied carefully. You're wearing black, you had a zanpakuto before becoming a full Arankar, your scleras were black. Only hollows with vast Shinigami power get black sclera eyes. You're also far more curious about Hueco Mundo than any hollow I've encountered. It doesn't take a genius to figure out that you're a former Shinigami, Athena deduced. Soi Fon looked down completely shamed. Why didn't you kill me then? Don't you hate Shinigami? What was the point of telling me all that stuff and bringing me here then? You're not a Shinigami anymore, you're a hollow. I told you those things because I was curious about how you ended up like this. I also wanted to see how you'd act if I pretended to be oblivious. It was all to test your character. You chose to follow us, whether it was out of curiosity or desperation is irrelevant. So you mind telling me how you ended up an Arankar like this? Athena asked. The former captain was terrified at the idea of being caught in a lie and simply decided to admit the truth. I was transformed by this hollow named White. He sent me back to the Soul Society in some strange hollow-feed state. I can't remember exactly what happened, but I was in a lab and they said something about the possibility of soul suicide. I thought I was going to die, but instead I became some type of vizard, I think. A vizard? What the heck is that? Yang wondered. Yin seemed deeply troubled by the news that Soi Fon was a former Shinigami, and was glaring daggers at her. A vizard is a Shinigami with hollow powers, they're the antithesis of Arankars, Soi Fon answered. I'm surprised the Shinigami would tolerate something like that, Athena said doubtfully. Gee, they didn't, they tried to execute me. Before it could happen I escaped through negation in the Soul Society. Soi Fon explained. You called a Mano's guardian. I'm surprised a Shinigami would know about something like that. I wasn't even aware your kind knew about negation, Athena said, piecing the puzzle together. How does it feel, huh? To try and be killed just for being a hollow? Exclamation mark quote. Yin interrupted somewhat bitterly as she continued to glare at Soi Fon. The former captain sighed and looked down. Look, I just follow orders, okay? My family has served the Soul Society for generations. We have to maintain balance and keep the worlds in order. Why you, even in spite of Athena's mercy, are still acting like one of them? Question mark. You make me sick, Yin spat. Calm down, Yin, Athena said sternly before facing Soi Fon again. You say black sclera represent strong Shinigami powers, mistress. Does that mean she was like a captain or something? Yang asked Athena. The former Espada tilted her head at Soi Fon knowingly. Were you a Shinigami captain? Yes, Soi Fon admitted quietly. Hueco Mundo isn't quite what you thought it was, huh? Arankars are scarce and your generation has probably never seen one before. When I spoke about the Gote 13, you seemed troubled. Is the fire wielder Yamamoto still alive? Or the Kenpachi Unohana? They murdered Zangetsu, you know. I don't know what kind of upbringing you had beneath such ruthless warriors, Soi Fon, but understand this. They are bigger monsters than any hollow ever was, Athena said conclusively. Soi Fon looked down again. So what happens now? I say we kill this Shinigami bitch. Yin growled. Athena glanced over at Yin and narrowed her gaze. 1 second later, the Arrancar was on her knees struggling to stay up. Calm down, the Lavender Beauty said in a low tone. She dropped that Arrancar to her knees by just looking at her. Did she do that with her spiritual pressure? This Athena is even stronger than I thought, Soi Fon realized. When we first found you, you mentioned the name White. I am curious, who is he? Athena asked, and why did he hollow fee you? White is a dangerous hollow that showed up on our radar a few years ago. He's been the #1 priority for the Soul Society for a while now. He invaded the Soul Society and infiltrated the Seraiti with the help of 3 traitor captains by the names of Aizen, Tusen, and Ichimaru. He declared war on the Soul Society and destroyed the Sekiseki barrier along with an entire Rukongai district, Soi Fon answered. Sekiseki barrier? What is that? Athena asked. It's a force field around the Seraiti created by the Sekiseki stone walls. It nullifies spiritual power which keeps anyone from breaking into the heart of the Soul Society, Soi Fon explained. Such a thing exists now. The Shinigami from my time didn't hide behind walls. Your wall must not have been that impenetrable if a single hollow broke through it, Athena noted. Soi Fon shrugged. Yeah, I guess so. Wait, so 3 captains betrayed the Soul Society and helped this hollow infiltrate the Seraiti. Why? Yang asked. That's what I came to Hueco Mundo for to find out. I was the stealth force captain. I came here to find out what their reason for attacking us was, Soi Fon bent the truth. One hollow has the Soul Society that terrified. HMPH, you're a lot weaker than you used to be if that's the case. They didn't fear the Espada when we were in our prime, Athena noted. Yin stood up and appeared calm now. She shook her head confused. Is that why you were looking for Las Noches? This White, does he live in Las Noches? Athena asked curiously. He's the king, Soi Fon answered after an awkward silence. Athena narrowed her gaze somewhat disgusted. Is that so? A true king is measured by his influence over a population. Ruling over the ruins of Las Noches with a bunch of Ijukas does not make one worthy of such a title. Only Zangetsu deserved that title. We should go see this guy for ourselves. It's an insult to the Espada for him to call himself the king of Hueco Mundo, Yang suggested. Good luck with that. White is the most powerful hollow the Soul Society has ever encountered. He's also got his own Espada. Las Noches is full of Arrancars loyal to him, Soi Fon stated. What? His own Espada? So that's why you were staring at my number? Athena said displeased. Soi Fon nodded. Yeah, between them and 3 traitor Shinigami captains, I doubt you'd even reach him. I was a fool for thinking I could outplay White. The guy's a monster, a true fiend. He did this to me because I hated hollows. I see, and he sent you back like that as well. This White seems serious about warring with the Soul Society. He sounds like the complete opposite of Zangetsu, Athena sighed. I think I like this guy already. Is he recruiting? Yin said approvingly. That's a rather cruel thing to do, especially to a former Shinigami captain. There's a difference between justice and revenge. This White sounds no better than the old Gote 13. It would have been more merciful to simply kill you. Yang held her head dejectedly. Does he actually have the capability to challenge the Shinigami leader's power-wise? Yin asked anxiously. She seemed impressed despite Athena and Yang's reactions. Before all of this happened I would have said no, but now I know for a fact that we stand no chance of winning without mass casualties. There's simply too many powerful hollows that serve him, Soi Fon answered. Athena stared blankly in the distance as if she was in a state of disbelief. Finally, she regained her senses and looked at Torre del Sol. I'm surprised such a cruel, bloodthirsty hollow had the ability to unite so many hollows beneath him. How could I have been blind to this happening? I visited the Manos Highlands about a century ago. I would have noticed a rising Arrancar population. I'm surprised you're not in support of it, to be honest. Soi Fon shook her head. Athena crossed her arms. It doesn't make sense to me. Where did all of those Arrancars come from? Why are they hungry for war? We don't know. The Soul Society had no idea about any of this until just recently. We thought White just had a few Vasto lords working with him. I had no idea that he had an Arrancar army, Soi Fon shrugged. What's the matter, Athena? I thought you'd be happy to see the Shinigami taken down a notch, Yin noticed. Something about this just doesn't sit right with me. I need to see for myself what's going on, Athena said seriously. I was afraid she was going to say something like that, but what do I really have to lose at this point? It's not like I'm part of the Soul Society anymore. I don't know what to think or do, but this Athena woman doesn't seem all that bad. She's going to get herself killed if she crosses white though. I wonder what that bastard will say when he sees me again. Soi Fon wondered. All of a sudden, the four of them sensed a skyrocketing spiritual pressure coming from the direction of the abyssal scar. From the distance, Athena could barely make out a green pillar of spiritual energy flashing skyward. What was that? Yang gasped concerned. Black and green spiritual energy. That's strange, only pit dwellers have green spiritual energy here. I've never seen it black like that though, Athena said. What does that mean exactly? Yin chimed in. It means one of the pit dwellers is an Arankar. And judging by that power, it's a powerful one too. Possibly one of the alphas, Athena realized. You asked me earlier if I saw the white bat right. I did, it's White's Arankar buddy. The two of them have been sighted together the most in all of White's attacks. When we first saw it, the white bat didn't even have a mouth. He's pretty much White's right-hand enforcer, Soi Fon told them. Come inside the tower, Soi Fon, I want to show you something. Athena gestured for Soi Fon to follow her as she jumped down and fast-tracked towards it. Ichigo, Las Noches, Ichigo sighed heavily as he walked out of Zale's lab again. They had just finished interrogating BG-9, and he was now up to speed on the Quincy's and their plans. The Arankar shook his head. This isn't good. They're planning on attacking us first, which would make it a bad idea to directly attack the Shinigami first. That would leave us exposed on a two-front war. Besides, I can't just leave Yuzu there all by herself. I won't let them turn her into one of them. It's bad enough Karen and the old guy had to get involved, but Yuzu too. Exclamation mark. Aizen was right, I need to acquire my second form as soon as possible. He was drawn from his thoughts as he noticed Zamari standing nearby outside of the lab. The burly man looked at him curiously. What are we going to do, White? Nothing changes for the time being. Zale has that Quincy properly restrained, and I highly doubt he's in a hurry to return to his leaders since we forced that information out of him. The best thing to do for now is to continue training, Ichigo sighed. I understand. Do you have any plans to deal with the Quincy's anytime soon? Zamari asked. Ichigo nodded. We're going to let them come to us. It gives us time to properly set things up for their arrival. Zale is continuing work on his bio-weapon, and all of the Espada are working on achieving second releases. We'll reconvene later whenever everyone gets back from training. Zale's safety should be a high priority if we're counting on his bio-weapon. You do not need to concern yourself with matters here, Your Highness. I will see to it that the Quincy remains docile and that Zale is protected should anything occur, Zamari suggested. All right, that sounds good. Try to get as much training in as you can though, Ichigo nodded. The scientist has already offered me good advice on how to improve. I will see to it that I do so, Zamari said conclusively. All right, see you later then, Ichigo waved before taking his leave. He made his way further down the palace hallways until he finally reached his room. Upon stepping inside, Ichigo noticed Nell standing there. The turquoise-haired beauty looked up at him eagerly as he entered his room. Ichigo, there you are. I've been looking for you the past day it seems. I figured you'd eventually come back to your room so I just waited here in case you were wondering, Nell quickly explained the situation. That's fine, Nell, what did you need? Ichigo asked. She frowned. It's about those Quincy's. There's no doubt in my mind that they were just simple scouts, but it still took Grimmjow and myself to stop them. I'm worried about how powerful they are. Are we in any real position to fight even a dozen of enemies like that? Sure, the Espada can likely match them, but what about the enemy leaders? Zale, Zamari, Yilfort, and I all uncovered some information about them from the android Quincy survivor. The three that came here were indeed Sternritters, the elite knights of the Wandenreich. Supposedly there's about 24 of them at any given time. From that number, only a handful of them are truly a match for the Espada. According to the Quincy survivor, BG9, most of the Sternritters are at or above the power level of Shinigami captains, Ichigo clarified. Nell seemed even more distressed now, 24 enemies just like them. That's a lot to deal with. Did you learn about which ones were the most dangerous or powerful? Ichigo nodded. Yes, according to BG9 there are 6 members of the Wandenreich that they consider war potentials. Sternritters B, C, D, M, V, and their leader Yuwatch who was A. Whenever the Espada reconvene, I'll go over what we've uncovered about these war potentials and their powers. There's no need to be worried, Nell. So long as we remain smart and all achieve our second releases, then everything will be fine. Well, if the upper Espada are preoccupied in dealing with the 6 war potentials, then who's going to fight the other Sternritters? Nell wondered. Our Fracciones and the Numeros will have to. That's why I stressed the importance of training them. Don't fret too much over that, the rest of the Espada will be able to help them, and I have Zale preparing a bio-weapon for extra measures. We'll be ready for them, Nell, Ichigo said intensely as he envisioned ripping apart the Quincy ranks. Well, I feel a little better knowing you at least have a plan for this. Thanks for calming me down, Ichigo. Nell let out a sigh of relief. It was very evident that she was stressed over the impending invasion. Have you made any progress with your training at all? Ichigo asked. Nell shrugged. Some I guess, but I don't really understand how we're supposed to reach a second level, you know. Well, I'm about to go train further out in the desert. You're welcome to join me if you'd like, Ichigo offered. I'd love to train with you, but are you sure I wouldn't get in your way? I don't want to be a distraction if you need time to really get things done. I know you've been really busy with everyone coming to you for every little thing lately, she said with a reserved demeanor. You won't be a distraction for me, Nell. Don't worry about that, and besides I know you're strong enough to hold your own with me. We'll get some good training in, Ichigo said encouragingly. Not a distraction, huh? I guess Ichigo doesn't really see me any differently than he does the others. The real problem is he's a distraction for me, Nell thought to herself. Well, it's more along the lines of me not being able to focus around you, she said quietly. Ichigo cocked his head confused. Really? Why's that? Well, you know, I've never actually been alone with you before now. I'd be too tempted to talk and stuff instead of train, Nell said shyly. I understand, Nell, it's no problem. I'm going to head out there for a bit. Let me know if you change your mind, he said as he made his way to the balcony edge. Before he could reach it, he felt Nell grab his hand from behind. He turned back to look at her confused, and noticed she had a small smile on her face. He stared at her for a moment uncertainly. What? She immediately proceeded to hug him tightly. Ichigo watched her curiously as Nell stood there for a brief moment in her embrace. The Arrancar woman sighed heavily. Thanks for being so great, Ichigo, you make everything around here better. No problem, Nalil, thanks for coming by. I'll catch up with you later, Ichigo hugged back before breaking the embrace and departing into the horizon. After he left, Nell leaned against the balcony and swallowed the lump in her throat. It's so hard to hold back around him. Under any other situation I can remain level-headed, but Ichigo just brings something out in me that I can't repress. I'd love to train with him, but he's too much of a distraction for me. I'll work hard and make sure I reach second release, for the sake of all of us. I don't want to lose what he's created for everyone in Las Noches. Ichigo, further out in the desert, finally a considerable distance away from Las Noches, Ichigo stopped and began to think about how he was going to reach his second release. The Hollow King let out a brief sigh as he sat down against a nearby rock formation. He tried to get all of the recent events out of his mind and focus solely on the matter at hand. Ichigo took this time to think about what Aizen had told him before. The blade is a part of me, I need to try and contact Zangetsu in my mind like I did that one time with Aizen. But how will I do that? Ichigo wondered as his mind drifted blankly. Zangetsu, who are you really? The original king of Hueco Mundo, there must be a reason why my zanpakuto is named after you, Ichigo thought to himself as he drifted deeper and deeper into his mind. After what felt like a long silence, he opened his eyes and found himself in his inner world. This time, however, instead of sideways skyscrapers, he saw what appeared to be a desert city. Ichigo was standing on top of a tall tower and noticed several others just like it nearby. For some odd reason, the moon was completely full as well. Below the towers was a large city encircled around them, and in the middle of the towers was a massive citadel. He stared at it in awe as he looked around. "This place looks so familiar," Ichigo said aloud as he leapt from the tower and flew around the massive citadel at high speed. Ichigo quickly made his way to the peak of the colossal, central tower and finally realized something. This place looks a lot like Hueco Mundo. Those towers, that sand, what the hell is this place? Exclamation mark single quote. Ichigo thought confused. He stood at the pinnacle of the central tower and looked over the city below with amazement. "Las noches, quite a sight to see, isn't it?" A voice sounded from behind. Ichigo reflexively spun around with his hand on the hilt of his weapon, zanjetsu. Exclamation mark. "Is that you?" His eyes widened in confusion when he saw a ghostly pale hollow with black scleras, golden irises, and white hair. The hollow looked almost exactly like him, but with a different color scheme. Ichigo stared at the hollow confused. "You're not Zanjetsu." "Where is he?" "He is Zanjetsu, but so am I," a dark-haired, blue-eyed third party announced. Ichigo gawked as he saw the dark-haired blue-eyed teenager again. This time, he didn't appear half-hollow-feet, but completely normal. "What the hell is this? Why's there two of you?" Ichigo demanded, confused. "For the same reason you have a dual zanpakuto. He is your inner hollow and I am your inner Quincy. Your Shinigami powers are too strong to fit into one weapon, and Quincy and hollow powers cannot fuse. As a result, you have two zanpakutos and two halves of Zanjetsu," the dark-haired teenager stated calmly as he walked next to the white hollow. Ichigo stared at the two of them for a moment before shaking his head. "I don't get it, we only combined because you were in trouble last time. Under normal situations, you don't really call upon my power," his inner Quincy explained. "What should I call you then?" Ichigo wondered. "Zanjetsu, Zanjetsu," they both said at the exact same time. The orange-haired hollow sighed as he shook his head. "All right, well here's the thing, I need more power. Tell me, is there any way to achieve a second release?" "To achieve a second release, you have to master Zanjetsu," the hollow Zanjetsu answered. "What the hell is that supposed to mean?" Ichigo asked, confused. His question was immediately answered when his hollow and Quincy selves each drew a single blade. He was quick to realize that they were each holding one of his swords. Ichigo shook his head at them. "You've got to be kidding me." Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like, comment and subscribe, as well as checking out the author on fanfiction.net.